What up, everybody? Welcome to the Smoking Tire Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Crown & Caliber. Crown & Caliber is the number one place to buy a secondhand luxury watch on the internet, folks. Listen to me for just a second. All of you, not all of you, some of you are thinking about buying your first, second, third, fourth, or 10th watch. Take some advice from me. I've been around this block a lot. You want to buy this stuff secondhand, but you don't want to buy it in a shady way. It's almost never worth the headache when you try and cheap out and save a little bit of money up front by eking out some private sale off some sketchy guy for a slightly better price. Trust me on this. Crown & Caliber has thousands of watches in stock, and the watch you see on their website is the watch you're going to buy. The very same thing. The photographs are the same watch. Then they've got technicians on staff that are going to make sure that watch works good before they send it out to you. If something happens to that watch and it stops working, they have a limited mechanical warranty. They can make it right, and that way you can enjoy a watch, whether it's new or used, with confidence from Crown & Caliber. I bought a bunch of watches from them guys, and they're great. They're just good people. You want to buy a watch from good people, and I think they are. They've always treated me very, very well, supported this show. Code TST175, write it down. Code TST175 gets you $175 off your first watch at CrownandCaliber.com. TST175 is the code, folks. Also, how about Westside Collector Car Storage? Are you in LA? This is my place. I'm opening the place. Are you in LA? Do you live here? Do you come here often? Maybe you want to leave a car here? Westside Collector Car Storage is for you. If you need somewhere to keep your prized vehicle out of prying eyes, but away from maybe the street, off the street, you out of that situation you're in right now that, my neighbor's got it, but I don't know, whatever it is, I've got you. WestsideCollectorCarStorage.com. Check us out. Our website is up. Check us out on Google Maps. We're right by the airport. We're right by Venice. We're right by Marina del Rey. Right by all the tech offices, Facebook and Google, in the heart of Playa Vista. Hit us up at WestsideCollectorCarStorage.com. All right. This episode features, a young woman who makes all of us feel like we really should be doing more with our day. Aurora Straus is a Harvard student. She is a racing driver, a professional racing driver, and she works with a bunch of different nonprofit groups. She runs her own racing camp. She runs charity organizations. This girl's she's got a lot going on. She really makes me feel like an underachiever. She's very smart and engaging, and a real pleasure to have in studio. Aurora Straus on the Smoking Tire Podcast.
What up, everybody? Do we have confirmation that we exist on the internet? Oh, yeah. There we go.
Sound is good.
We do.
Great.
What's up? What up, everybody? How you doing? Smoking Tire Podcast. Gray-ass Monday afternoon. It's supposed to be raining. It's a good week to drive in the rain. I got the McLaren GT, which will probably be a good wet rain, Jesus Christ. Wet
Dry
Canyons car. Hello, Aurora. Aurora Straus in the house.
Thank you guys for having me.
What's happening?
I've watched your podcast before, so I'm very excited to be here.
Turn on your professional voice, right? Because you have sponsors. You got to be
yes.
laser focused.
Thank you to
welcome
BMW USA, Richard Mille.
Yeah.
Capital Group. Thank you, guys.
Thank you to BMW for your ill press car outside.
Yeah, I have an M850i X-Drive, and it's a convertible, which is great for LA.
It's good for the West Side, yeah.
Good for the West Coast.
When I came in here and I walked in the door, I was like, whoa, Aurora's rocking some hotness outside. And the first thing she goes is, it's one of three.
Yeah.
What cities do they give you demos in?
I have New York, Boston, and California. California is when I fly out.
Yeah, but you have a college press car?
I have a college press car.
Oh my God, what a gangster you are.
It's in the Harvard Square garage.
You must have the only BMW at Harvard.
Probably.
That's mean,
it costs
Zach.
more to park it. Yeah,
I bet it does.
It costs so much to park it. It's worth it.
Wait, I'm sorry to pry, but what's your monthly parking? I happen to be getting into this business, and I need to know.
My monthly parking is about $500.
Okay, yeah, it's expensive. Not quite Manhattan, but for LA, that would be high.
It's not quite. Yeah, it's not quite Manhattan. It's also in Harvard Square. I mean, I was debating between that and saving like $100
No,
going
yeah,
further
but you get to
out.
say Harvard Square on podcasts.
You get to say Harvard Square on podcasts.
Yeah. Oh, she goes to Harvard, people.
No, I think the cool
Yeah.
thing is, and it kind of sucks for your position. It's like you've earned this car by like driving and racing, and they gave you a car. But there's probably a lot of other people at school that have a similar car that
They got it for a quinceañera.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super lucky I have it. I think that the one difference is a lot of people do not have their cars on campus because it is completely worthless unless you're actually driving around places all the time. And last
In Boston, yeah. How annoying is it? It's not a good driving city.
it's not.
Cobblestones,
It's not,
right?
It's not.
cobblestones. It's like the 1700s.
It's a bunch of cobblestone, especially if you're driving through like Beacon Hill, the Newbury Street area.
Yeah.
It is never, ever worth actually taking your car out. But with the number of times I go to New York City a month with a combination of meetings, tracks, things like that, I spend about quadruple the amount that I currently spend on parking on like flights and train tickets. And
It's a good drive, actually. I used to do that drive a lot. It's not
a
so bad.
really fun drive.
It's a
Once you
nice
get used to it,
drive.
it's like muscle memory. You just go down 84 and
It's a pretty strong drive.
listen to audiobooks.
Yeah. You know, we're from like the same hood.
Yeah, okay.
You went
I
to
saw
Hackley,
that you had
right?
a 914 number.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, who is this guy?
I've been keeping it this whole time. I'm like grandfathered in. No, you went to Hackley, right?
I did.
I went to Rye Country Day.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. Maybe I gotta leave. I'm sorry, guys.
Rivalries. Yeah, we used to like, you know, I'm obviously older. We used to play each other in sports. It's like the same circle of super Jewy private schools.
Super Jewy private schools. Yeah.
Okay, I was feeling bad for a minute about making the BMW at Harvard joke, and now I do not.
Don't feel bad about
Any
it.
joke that he's been to, you know, my parents live in Greenwich and I grew up in Purchase and blah, 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 blah. So, like, he's been to where he knows. So, any joke you can make about where I'm from, Zach, just throw that right on Aurora. It applies.
100%. If you met my
First day.
grandparents, you'd be like, I know these people.
I know your dad.
You could probably you could come up with my dad's whole life story by just recounting your life story.
Yeah.
Though. It's a classic like Jewish kid in upstate New
Yeah,
York.
but you basically grew up on a racetrack.
Sort of,
So,
yeah.
I mean, well, you grew up at least with a father who grew up on a racetrack, right?
Yeah, I mean, I got involved in it as a way of bonding with my dad, and my first time at a racetrack was at Monticello, and it was a dirt and totally abandoned airport. When I first saw it, it was dirt. So
I
it's
drove it when it
cool.
was dirt too, in like an Ford Explorer or something. It was awesome.
It's been really cool growing up there and watching it transition into like a real racetrack. You know, it's 4 miles of like actual. It's
one of the
hard.
best racetracks like in the country. I mean, it's fantastic racetrack.
One of the things that I really appreciate about it, and obviously I'm biased, right? But I think
Her
that
dad like runs the joint.
Yeah,
and helped built
yeah.
the joint
So-
and like is the man up
great
there.
place.
And I've
Background-
known him for like ever.
background information on this for anyone watching is my dad was one of the founding members of Monticello Motor Club in 2008. At that point, no one had really come up with a sustainable business model for like a private racetrack country club. So he was one of the original people running it, and it opened pretty much during the recession.
It was the first one, and it really seemed like it wasn't going to work for a
No.
little bit, and then it was like,
It did not. As a family, we were all like, "Ew, is this going to
yeah,
function?"
no, it seemed like it was going to be rough for a little while.
No,
yeah.
but it's doing super well now, which I mean, obviously as his daughter, I'm super proud of him. It's a family business. I'm up there all the time. And I really did grow up there. Like we lived next door. My parents moved after I graduated. So we live a half mile away from a racetrack. I wake up to race car sounds.
Do you cut down the neighbors' signs? They're like, get out of here.
No,
Some of the
okay.
neighbors put up some signs that were like, get out of here, slow down, you're not on the track anymore.
More context on that. There's one single neighbor that has a sign that says "Stop the Noise,"
yeah.
and many neighbors that have signs that say "We Heart MMC."
Oh, really? Oh,
Which
cool.
is-
The tide has turned. I haven't been
the
there in a
tide is
minute.
turned. Well, people are realizing that it's good to have local businesses pop up.
Because there's
right?
not much up there. I mean, I was
There's-
there a month ago, and
There's not
pretty
too much
sleepy.
up there. It's growing quickly, though. The casino opened a couple of years ago. That's made a big difference. That you have a hotel a 5-minute drive away. That's like pretty
That's
good.
a big deal.
It's a
Yeah.
huge deal. It has completely transformed the types of events that we can reasonably run up there. Like I'm hosting an all-female track day up at Monticello in May, which I'm
Didn't you
super
do one
excited
before?
about.
I thought I saw one on your Instagram. You do the
I did
Girls
like-
with Drive thing, right? Isn't that your thing?
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
run Girls with Drive educational programs. Those are for young kids, so age 8 to 18. And then what I'm doing in May is I'm partnering with Christina Nielsen. And the idea is we're pulling together my organization for children, right? For children and young
Mm-hmm.
adults, and her organization that runs track days for women who are fully grown, and we're merging them.
Cool.
So we're going to have joint programs.
That's fantastic.
I'm
How
super
many? Do you
excited
have a bunch
about
of people signed up for it yet?
We just announced it a couple of days
Oh,
ago.
okay.
So we already have
where can people
some
go to?
signups.
Girls with Drive on Instagram, is that a good place to start?
Yes, there should. Okay, so the
Follow
link
that, Zach.
in the Girls with Drive Instagram, the motorsportsregistration.com/MMC.
Cool.
That's where you can sign up. It's a really cool program. I mean, I also think, as you know, all of the kind of standard tropes about women knocking each other down. The worst thing in the world is when that is a self-fulfilling prophecy and women actually do knock each other down. And Christina's awesome. She's been a huge role model for me. She's been a great coworker.
Do you see that in racing, the tropes of women knocking each other down in racing?
Yeah.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. I think, and that's an unpopular...
It's on the internet, everyone's all like, fucking go girls.
No,
it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a hot take.
Sorry, my bad.
No, it's okay. No, I'm saying like I agree that that's the kind of message that we all publicly send across, and a lot of people like talking the talk, but very few companies and very few women will actually walk the walk, and that's actually one of the things that I appreciated the most about Christina was, you know, she came up to me and she was like, I think women are stronger when we work together. I would love for our organizations to partner with each other. And, you know, what am I really doing for women's equality if I'm not helping other female racers? And I totally agree with her. I think it's really easy to kind of project messages of women's empowerment, and it's much harder to actively go out of your way to help each other.
At the end of the day, it's like about organizing like real world events. I think there's like you got to take it off the internet and into the real world, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's hard, right? Like that takes a lot of coordination. It takes a lot of organization. But I think the dynamic is shifting.
And if you're an influencer, like acting globally, you know, trying to take a global social reach and turn that into something local, especially something local that happens like on a day, is like really, really, really hard.
It's super hard. I think also particularly with motorsports, where the barrier to entry in terms of the connections you need to have, the financial background you need to have, it's incredibly high, right?
Yeah.
So if you take kind of the average go-karting series, right, for 7 to 8 year olds, there are actually a lot of girls. And what happens is those girls get taken out, not taken out in a racing sense, like their parents pull them out of the go-karting world. And frequently it's not because they don't have potential. It's because like sometimes they have limited resources that are being allocated to their brothers
What
instead.
does it cost to run a season of 8-year-olds karting? Do you know? Did you do that? When did you start?
So
back
I know
that young?
No, I started directly in a car when I was 13. No prior karting experience. So it's actually a new world to me. And the more I go to karting tracks, the more I'm like, this is intense. Like, have you ever seen the show Dance Moms? It's kind
Sadly, yes.
It's kind of like that. There are
Wow.
crazy helicopter parents in the go-karting world. So I did not grow up like that. I don't know if that's fortunately or unfortunately, but
I think fortunately, helicopter parents are not generally viewed as good.
Helicopter
good thing.
parents, not good, but extra racing experience, good.
I'm pretty sure I have a memory. Let's see. When you were 13, what year would that have been? I'm pretty sure I have a memory of meeting you when you were very young and on one of, if not your very first track day. It was
probably.
It was like a
so
long.
Like
what was it in? Do you
2012,
remember?
2013.
What was it in the car? Do you remember?
Oh, I was in Mazda Miatas for years.
Oh,
I was in a
right.
used Miata. I did.
No, but you drove one of your dad's cars or something. You were driving something cool. It wasn't like a Miata.
There was this one single time. This might be what you're thinking of. It was like a PR stunt that neither one of us expected to work. We drove a Radical SR3.
That was it.
And that was my like brief shot at fame when I was 50. It was for my 15th birthday. I got 5 laps and I was so excited. I look back on that video and I'm like, I cannot believe that is on the internet. I'm like half throttle on a straightaway.
Right.
It was bad. I had no idea what I was doing, right? I had no driving experience, really. I had been in
It's a gnarly car.
I had been in a used Miata.
You had literally,
And then an
you hadn't
MMC
driven anything other than race cars because you were 13, 14, 15, and
Yeah.
they put you in a Radical. Like, that's a huge
Yeah,
jump.
well, and an MMC,
Yeah.
I hopped into a member's Radical and did 3 laps. I'm very happy I didn't crash it. And it was reposted by like Car and Driver and Road and Track, and I started getting all of these messages. It got like 50,000 views on YouTube, and I was like, oh my God, I'm apparently hot shit. And then I didn't do anything for a couple of years.
Yeah. And the internet's forever, as it turns out.
The internet is forever, and that in-car video of me in a Radical SR3.
That's
Not
okay.
knowing what I'm doing,
Listen,
it's
it's worked
forever.
out okay.
It
Don't worry
has
about it.
definitely worked out okay. But I'm also like, of all in-car video, like there are so many like badass saves from the last 3 years, like really good in-car video to have online. But you also want to be careful about what in-car video you like
I just got an idea.
Post, right?
Tosh.0, have you seen it?
No.
You never seen a show called Tosh.0, hosted by a guy named Daniel Tosh? One thing he does is
It was big in the 70s.
It was big like
It was huge
8
like
years ago.
2012.
One of the things he did was called Web Redemptions, where people who had embarrassing internet videos got to come on his show, explain themselves, and then do better. So what we need to do is get you out in another radical
and
have
better.
you like set the track record in Monticello in like an SR8 or some
True,
crazy
good idea.
shit.
That's true. I need to go back out. I'm going to put them side by side, the points where I'm like half throttle in first gear.
Yeah.
No,
15.
that's a really good video idea because there's some humility that comes from being able to look back and go, okay, that's how I drove, and you admit that you weren't driving as well as you should have, could have. You're like, okay, I was pretty green. So if you put the side-by-side video up, you can show people, here's how I fucked up, but I thought I was awesome, and now here's how I'm driving correctly, and here's how I've improved. And
yeah, I mean, I also definitely did not think I was awesome. I was very surprised by the reaction online, and I think the reaction online was really just like, wait a minute, there's a girl who's also young, who's also driving a race car. Like these people don't really exist, and now they do, thank God. But at that point, I think Road and Track saw it, and it was just such an anomaly, right, that it was worth reposting.
Well, I know someone who works for Road and Track, and we might be able to solve this problem.
Very true.
Immediately. What you should do is go whatever that lap time was, go beat it in like a shit car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I 100% could be that lap time in a Miata right now.
There's your video. You know what I mean? There's your video. I think
Oof.
that'd be a lot of fun, and it wouldn't cost nothing. It'd be great fun.
Yeah, it would be super fun.
Yeah,
all right.
that'd be cool.
Future video idea. That video that has been up for years and hasn't touched a single soul is now like resurfacing. Like everyone who's
Watch the analytics. You're gonna get us like. No, I'm just kidding. No one listens to this show. So you obviously, with a dad who was running and building a racetrack, and you got into a little Miata, got track days, and when were you like, hang on, I am gonna make a go at this?
Not until a sponsor believed in me. So.
How does that happen? They show up and they're like, I saw you on the internet, or did you go shopping for sponsors?
I started to go shopping for sponsors early on. I had no idea what I was doing. The first sponsorship contract I sent out was for like $500,000. I was nobody. And I did actually get a response, but
Really?
It was, are you kidding me? And then he ghosted me.
Oh no.
But I had no idea what I was doing. And I think, again, the startup cost for racing is really substantial, and you can be from a relatively privileged, high resource background and still need a crap load of startup funding. That
rich
is not
family and rich race team. These are different levels.
Super.
This is another level.
So I needed to figure out what I was doing, and I think particularly as a 14-year-old girl that didn't have the go-karting background that a lot of professional drivers had, I was not confident. I did a 3-day Skip Barber racing school in 2014.
Where'd you go, Lime Rock?
No, it was actually at Sebring.
Oh, that's probably fun.
Sebring.
That's probably fun, yeah.
It was fun, except I was the slowest out of 30 students. And at the time, it was a huge emotional hit for me. I'd also been in a car for like a single month. I'd done 2 track days ever. I just figured out how to like downshift. And then I did this race school.
Who's laughing now?
Yeah, absolutely. But so I actually had an instructor there who offered to take me out for extra practice afterwards because I was clearly struggling. And he told me that I probably just wasn't cut out for this, that I kind of braked like a girl. All of the classic tropes that you would expect to hear that are extremely gendered and extremely ageist just kind of came out. And I almost quit. I was like, why am I doing this? Like I know that it's too expensive for me to like casually get into. I'm clearly not that good at it. And
Were
then
you
I had
having
a conversation
fun in the car?
I was having a ton of fun, but I just didn't think that it was something I was cut out for. I really internalized what he said. And then I talked to my dad, and he was like, okay, you have 2 options for not just for this situation, but in life, right? Like you can either let this knock you down or you can prove him wrong. Like try to prove him wrong. This may not be your long-term career, but you're actually not bad at it considering the fact that you've driven like 2 days ever.
Did you have a license at this point
No.
yet? Yeah.
I actually got my permit at Sebring.
I'm sorry?
I got my permit. I got my permit while I was in Florida at Sebring for my first ever MX5 Cup race. So
That's
this all kind of
hilarious.
ties together. So I
Do you need a permit at least to race MX5 Cup? Okay.
Nope.
All right.
So this kid named Robert a couple years ago beat me as like one of the youngest kids ever to do well in MX5 Cup. He won a race at 14.
Wow.
I was like,
no fear.
Jeez.
I was like, you're still in middle school. Like, have you taken like standardized tests yet? Like,
have you seen the 12-year-old
when you
drift
go
kid
home?
from Europe? Like, kids are starting out. It's almost like
Super
skiing
young.
or any other sport. It's like 5 years old. Here,
Yeah.
do you fit in the car with blocks? Go for it.
Well, and it's crazy because the barriers to entry are getting higher and higher because it's not just financial barriers. You also need decades of experience. Like, I'm actually, based on my trajectory in racing right now, I am up against people who have been in go-karts since they were 2. And I feel like I started early, and it's like, actually, I'm a full decade behind on
Don't
some
you
of these
race
people.
against Randy Popes and he's 60?
I'm multiple
he's like
decades behind
40
some
years
people.
older than you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a moment a couple months ago where like I was on track at the same time as Bill Oberlin, and I was like, you know, it was like a minor ego boost, right? I was like, I still have a lot to learn. It was an ego check and an ego boost. I was like, I am so lucky to be around these people who are legends, who I grew up admiring, and I have so much to learn from them. And it's also really cool that I can do this. Like, it's really cool that I can match these people's times and be out here and be
Did you get close to
competitive.
Bill?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's moving. Bill he is real deal Bill Oberlin.
Again, like, I have a lot to learn though. I mean, I can put down that type of time. I'm not sure if I can do it as consistently as Bill. He's also like he's in his, I think, late 40s at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm 21, so like I can move a little faster.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Smack talk. The
No,
reflexes.
no, I'm-
Reaction time or
No, I'm
physically?
saying like if he can do the same thing I can consistently, that means I feel like I should be able to up my game even more. You know what I mean? And I think also someone who is that respected and that kind of seasoned as a driver, there's always a lot to learn from them on and off the racetrack, right? How do they interact with fans? How do they carry themselves in kind of tense scenarios politically, which are, you know, happen left and right at the racetrack? How do you deal with kind of gray area situations from a strategy standpoint, things like that? So
go back to the first sponsor. You said you were trying to get your first sponsor.
ModSpace Motorsports.
Okay.
So ModSpace at that point sponsored the occasional MX5 Cup driver. They were sponsoring the CJ Wilson racing team.
Oh yeah, CJ rules.
Big throwback.
Yeah.
Yep.
CJ's the homie. He's great.
So it was like that, and I can't remember the specific details of the program, but they were sponsoring Patrick Gallagher. He's a good friend. So they had a few guys in that program, and I met Charles Paquin and Will Mann, who I'm still super close with. They're awesome guys, and they took a chance on me. So I ran in 2015 MX5 Cup. My learning curve was incredibly steep. I did a couple days of track driving in a Miata. I did that one single 5-minute stint in a Radical SR3. And then I did like a couple David Murray track days in Miata, and then the Skip Barber Race School. And then I went straight into MX5 Cup, which
That's not a lot of experience.
Anyone who knows anything about MX5 Cup knows that it is brutal.
Yeah, they're aggressive.
Very experienced professional drivers go into MX5 Cup because they have pretty decent payouts and like kind of get
and
burned.
the operating cost is probably lower than a lot of other
operating cost is pretty low comparatively
Their cars are
speaking.
within death at the end of every race.
Yeah,
it's
crazy. the number of like weird stories that I have from MX5 Cup, from just like the closest racing I've ever experienced in my entire life. But the learning curve was steep. Like the first couple races, I was like dead last, right? I had no idea what I was doing. The benchmark was like, can you be safe? And the ModSpace guys.
Shiny side up is a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was finishing the races really consistently. I was getting faster consistently. And the ModSpace guys, like you said, low operating cost, right? So compared to something like IMSA, the budget was relatively low. The stakes, you know, the risk was relatively low in sponsoring someone like me. And it worked. I was like mid-pack. I did a partial season in 2015. So just like a couple races, same thing, partial season in 2016. At that point, I was like mid-pack, mid to front of the pack. And then they sponsored me in my first race in IMSA in 2017.
I mean, that's good, man. That's a good way to get it going.
It's a great way to get it going. And I also am very, I don't want to say lucky. I'm very fortunate that I had someone who believed in me like that. And I think that is the key factor with everyone. It might be a family member, right? Like it might be a family member thinking that you can do this and
where
putting personal funding in.
Where did they see you? How did they find you?
So my dad did, I think, a few MX5 Cup races.
Oh, okay.
And then he was running on the CJ Wilson racing team. So I've also known CJ since I was really, not really little, but like probably 9 or 10 years old.
He has good taste in cars.
He has very good taste.
Yeah, his spec is always really choice.
Yeah.
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 Good dude. That's crazy, man. So so you did one race in IMSA in 2017?
Sorry, I did 2 races in IMSA in 2016. That was them taking a chance on me.
Driving
a Porsche Cayman.
not bad.
No.
Those are fun.
In the ST class, which is unfortunately gone now.
That
was really sad
class was like
it was a great class.
It was like the pretty close to stock class, right? Was that class?
Pretty close to stock, also super competitive because again, relative to other operating costs within IMSA, it was the cheapest thing that you could reasonably do. And the cost increased exponentially year after year. But I mean, at the point when I was running it, it was somewhat reasonable.
Yeah.
So I did one race at Watkins in 2016. I remember I actually puked before I got into the car for the first time.
Like
I was
James
so
Hunt.
scared.
He was hungover.
I remember that's true. I was not hungover.
No.
Yeah, but I got into the car for the first time. I was terrified. I was like, this is something that I have watched all of my role models doing. Like people who I wanted to be when I grew up were racing in ST and IMSA.
Yeah.
And I qualified, I think like mid to back of the pack. It was super easy to drive, completely exceeded my expectations. And then I drove from 24th to, I think I pulled the car in an 8th or 9th place.
Oh, wow.
In ST.
That's a good drive.
And this sounds crazy, but it was years into someone else believing in me and being like, you can do this. That was the first time ever that I got out of a race car being like, shit, I
did good.
I could really do this. Like, this is something, like, I need practice, but something's there, right? Like, this is actually something that I could pursue. And then I did one more IMSA race at Road Atlanta in 2016. We had weird gremlins with the car, but we still managed to finish 11th or 12th. And then 2017, I ran a full season in that car, and we did really well. I finished as the top rookie in that class.
I mean, to go to do your first IMSA race start and like make a bunch of passes, I can imagine would be like, oh yeah, this is gonna be me. Like I'm gonna be the next thing.
Well, it's not even I'm gonna be the next thing. It was just the realization that like this is. Maybe I'm not just messing around here. Mm-hmm. Like I was so stressed all the time about like the stakes are extremely high in racing compared to school and the rest of your teenage life. And being a teenager in general is not conducive. It doesn't inspire confidence, right? Nothing about being a teenager inspires personal confidence.
Right.
No.
So I was constantly I was very doubtful of the fact that these other people were believing in me and spending what I viewed as insane amounts of money on me. Mm-hmm. And I, probably once every couple weeks, I was like, should I just be throwing in the towel with this? Like, I love it. I think about it 24/7. I can't sleep because I'm thinking about the next time I'm racing. But this is, the stakes are high. Like when you crash, you have people to answer to. You have sponsors who need to pay to rebuild the car. You have teammates who may not be able to drive the car, and vice versa. When you do really well, that high, as you know, it's pretty unique and pretty addicting, and everything else in life just gets boring.
I could see that. I've been watching the Formula One Drive to Survive Season 2 on Netflix. These guys crash their cars all the time. They still have rides. I think you're okay.
Yeah. It's a different culture, though, like European racing versus American racing. Why is that? Do you think the car is disposable in European racing more so than... No, I think the driving in general, there tends to be less of a focus on... Actually, statistically, not that Formula One is cheap. It is not even remotely close to cheap. But GT racing in Europe is significantly cheaper than GT racing in the US. And I do think there is an element of like for example, GT4 Europe, the race series that parallels SRO. I'm pretty sure a budget that one of my friends got quoted for a full GT4 series there is like around a third of the price.
Really? Why is that?
And it has nothing to do with the race series here not being able to like control costs super efficiently. Well, it has little to do with that. It's travel budget, operating budget. Like for example, are
the courses just spread way further out in America compared to Europe, and so you have to? Yes,
and there are also more business models in Europe that are like, for example, if you do like a VLN race at Nürburgring. Those teams live there. Oh, yeah, true.
So they drive the car up the road to the track.
Yeah. So you're not paying any transportation costs.
That's a good point.
You are paying to fly yourself out there. But a lot of the things that add up really, really quickly from an operating cost standpoint in the US are transportation. I mean, that's huge. People have no idea how expensive it is to like cart a car across the country.
Yeah. Well, you're paying a staff of like 10, 15, 20 people around the clock.
So that's another thing is you're pulling staff in from what tends to be at least in most race teams' business models, different parts of the country. Like if you look at the average like travel, like if you have like a list of like
the itinerary.
Yeah, like itineraries for different people on race teams. They're coming from all across the country. Guaranteed you have someone on the West Coast. Guaranteed you have someone on the East Coast. You tend to have people from Canada.
You got to have a German.
A ton of people from Florida.
Yeah, everyone needs
you have people who are
somebody
traveling
talking like this,
cross-continentally. Right. So it gets... I mean, those...
Every team needs one.
I just lose the Hengels and uniforms.
You need a German or an Italian to offer like bits of wisdom and go like that.
Wow, that's the racing trope.
I am just
I
a
have one.
muse.
So.
the German muse.
We're hoping we raise some more money so we can get a German engineer. Right now we have a German coat check guy.
If someone speaks in a German accent, though, at least within the BMW world, I'm immediately like, you are more authoritative.
Yeah,
like, tell me where I should be or like what I'm supposed to be doing.
Or British, either one.
No,
British
you don't want to go to a bar with a British guy because all the girls will just think he's a fucking genius, even if he's like,
That's the thing.
3 brain
Accents
cells.
give you IQ points. I can't really describe it.
I'm a janitor, but here's what I think of coronavirus. Like,
or they take them away if you're Australian.
Yeah. Harvard's very international. I do think it's interesting watching the dynamics across different international kids because I've grown up in the US, right? And there are like totally those stereotypes. Like British kids are like, oh, like the Australian accent just makes you sound stupid. I'm like, really? Like I've just never.
My wife actually says that too. I don't actually think that, but I repeat the joke, which is probably a bad thing for me to be doing. But I think in certain situations it does make you sound kind of dumb.
But there are totally those jokes that get recirculated across the Harvard world within all the whole international group, and I'm actually the only person in my like rooming group that is domestic.
Well, you also speak like perfect Northeastern English as well. What are they gonna make fun of you? You don't have like a thing.
I don't have a single accent.
Yeah, you don't have a thing.
Occasionally the New Yorker will come out in me, but only when I'm super tired. Like I'll say coffee instead of coffee.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Water.
That'll happen. Yeah.
Water.
Do you enjoy Harvard?
I love Harvard. I'm not there super frequently, especially on weekends or like during active racing season, right? Like it's a Monday and I'm here.
What is Harvard?
Do you get
anyway?
Do you actually get college athletic credit at all? Do you represent Harvard on the grid? You don't put an H on your car or nothing?
No. Collegiate athletics are totally separate. I actually think you can't race any sponsorship money as a collegiate athlete.
Oh, that's probably
right?
true. Yeah, there might be NCAA rules against that.
Well, either way, there isn't that much of there isn't really any precedent for not like Harvard specifically racing, but very few people are in college and also racing because it's hard as crap. It's annoying. So
except for like FSAE or something like that.
FSAE is
do they have a team
cool.
at Harvard? They must recruit. They don't. How do they not do one just to recruit you as a driver?
I was between Harvard and a couple other schools, and Harvard not having an FSA team was like a huge downside.
Yeah. I'm surprised they don't.
I wanted to work as an engineer on one of the teams because I was like, I've been driving a couple years now. Like at that point when I was choosing schools, I was doing my full IMSA season in 2017. It was going super well. And I was like, I want to work on a car in a low stakes environment, right? Like I'm never ever going to go to professional race team and be like, hey, can I like wrench on your GT car? That's not a thing. But in FSAE, it totally is. They'd be like, yeah, you know enough about race. Like I know enough to be completely functional in an FSAE team, not a professional race team, but I could be one of the main engineers. So
are you
I really
in school
wanted to.
for engineering?
No, I switched my major. I went in as a mechanical engineer, but all of their labs are Fridays through Sundays.
Oh, wah wah! And so now
it was pretty much mechanical engineering or racing.
What has weekday access?
What has weekday access? I'm a double major in history and literature, which is considered one major there, and government.
Oh, so it's actually a triple. History, literature is one, and then government is another?
History and literature is a bit of a weird major. So it's the oldest major at Harvard, and the way it works is you choose a very specific concentration. So I am studying the history, I made this up, right, because I was interested in it, the history of conflict and cooperation across the Americas, the two continents, from 1850 onward. And
that
then
seems like a lot.
And then I create a list of courses and then petition for approval to have that be my major.
Oh, wow. You make up the major.
And it has to display a balance of history and literature.
Holy shit.
So I'm creating my curriculum tailored to the very specific research subject in which I'm interested. And then I get to write a thesis That's is
crazy.
a culmination of all of that.
I'm going to mute your microphone because I just feel bad about my life and everything I've done with it.
I know.
I'm a race car driver and I've made up my own major at this very good school.
I mean, that's a real like reading heavy reading major too.
It is, but
old texts.
It is.
Dense fucking leather-bound books that are gilded around the edges and shit. Need the Dewey Decimal System every day.
I love that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I mean, I also think one of the and from a completely logistical standpoint, separately from the fact that I think Hist and Lit is really cool. I'm like out nerding myself right now. But logistically,
everyone calls history Hist. Don't worry.
Okay.
Everyone's got a nickname.
Everyone
for
calls
history.
it Hist and Lit.
Sorry, yeah, that's pretty fucking nerdy. If you have a nickname
nerdy.
for history.
It's okay. I've outed myself to the online community as a total dork now. But from a logistical standpoint, a lot of the Hist and Lit courses that are considered upper level, or a lot of the upper level courses at Harvard in general, meet once a week for 3 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So they're considered very reading intensive. Those are classes that you're technically only supposed to take your junior and senior year of high school, of college.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing right now is taking 5 one-day-a-week courses. That's not true. 4 one-day-a-week courses, and then 1 filmed macroeconomics class where I only have to actually be present once a week. And then I have them all totally crunched into Tuesday and Wednesday.
Oh my God, yeah, it's a gnarly couple
days. So Tuesday and
days.
Wednesday is a gnarly couple of days.
Yeah, and then you're straight road show the rest of the day?
I can fly out Wednesday night for racetracks.
Wow, that's a schedule, dude. That's fucking
impressive. That's cool.
Impressive.
It's impressive.
That's very hardcore. It's got to be tough to have a social life at college doing that, though.
Yeah.
Really tough.
I'm not going to pretend that it's... I mean, I think this is something that I've had to come to terms with, that I think even if I quit racing now and just went to college... And this is going to sound super condescending, but because of the experiences I've had in racing, I've found it very hard to socialize with a lot of people at Harvard. And that's not, it's not meant to be condescending. It's that my world is fundamentally so different, and not necessarily better or worse. It's just very different. And it's very hard to, so if you're in the racing world, I think you understand it. Separately from Harvard, right? If you're trying to talk to anyone outside of the racing world about the politics of the racing world, it's very hard to start a conversation, or even really elicit sympathy or a reaction, because it's confusing.
To it, right?
Yeah, it's why actors date other actors. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing.
It's very hard to find, right? And
it's like a scene in a fucking movie where you go back to your college campus and you're there's a montage of you reading gilded, thick ass books and just dreaming about the racetrack.
Yeah, that is exactly what happens.
There's actually a movie scene that is pretty much.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and that's not to say I don't have friends that I absolutely love at Harvard. I've managed to find a small number of people who I adore, who understand that I'm going to be on the road a lot, and those are my people.
But you did this shit starting freshman year, though, right? Have you been doing this?
I took a year off of college actually to
go
this.
racing.
So this, I mean, it's very much racing has come first in my life, and college has come second, and it does operate that way sometimes. I'm here right now, right? This is midterm week. I'm taking a red eye to take my midterms.
Fuck, man, that's a schedule. But just I actually, for reasons that were completely unrelated to awesome things like you, I found myself, I went to Penn in Philly, and I found myself leaving on weekends for a variety of reasons. But when I came back, I found it hard to cultivate friendships, especially because after a lot of those bonds happened the first half of freshman year.
Yeah.
And I took myself pretty much out of that scene, and then then you get back and you're oh man, I kind of missed that one, didn't I?
Well, it's also weird because the problems that I have are objectively, and again, it's not a quantitative, they're harder or less hard than problems that other college students have, but I think I DM'd you this on Instagram. A few weeks ago, I was on a phone call with a race team from Europe, except they could only speak at 9 a.m. their time. Yeah. And I was that's fine because I'm going to be awake at 3 a.m. So I was on a conference call and they were there was a drunk kid who was sobbing in my hallway, and I was like,
you did.
I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know what has happened to you.
You mentioned the drunk
And
guy
I'm sorry,
crying.
and I hope you get home okay. But I'm also on an extremely important conference call right now. And he was like, "It's 3 a.m., dude." I was like, "I know."
These are not
That's
problems
really
that normal
funny.
people have to deal with.
Right, right. But again, like, not necessarily like more or less dramatic. It's
No,
just
but
very
very
hard to
real.
explain to
Different.
someone like, yeah, like I had a hard night. I was on a conference call with these like European guys, and there was this really weird language barrier, and I'm not really sure if I'm like ready for this step in racing. And they're like,
Well, so much of conversation is someone going, "Oh yeah, that's like when I did it," and
Right.
all of the people you go to school with
You just
just
go,
stare
"Oh."
at you and like, "Huh?" And like, "Well, remember last night we got drunk, we did that." You know, they don't have anything to connect to that. They don't have like a problem that like requires logistics and conference calls and those
and
things.
it goes the other way, right? Like, I don't want to make it sound more condescending than I actually mean for it to be, because there are a lot of circumstances that people have that are really impressive at Harvard that I can't empathize with.
Yeah, they have
Like,
their own proclivities. They
like
got
the process of job recruiting, for example, right? Like, I sort of understand it, but I understand like raising sponsorship money or like negotiating deals with race teams. But people do have like these really big, impressive.
There's like 14-year-olds at Harvard, aren't there? Like, you're not going to talk to that person. What are you going to talk to the 14-year-old super prodigy about?
There
you know?
are, okay, that's another, the stereotype of like all of the young prodigies going to Harvard, totally true.
Really?
There
Like,
are
who
so,
are these children?
I
Yeah,
took a year
it's
off.
like
I
smart
took
of
a
a
year off
doctor,
of school. Yeah, I took a year off of school and was also a bit old for my grade when I graduated high school. So I'm older than most seniors I know,
That's weird.
Whoa.
and I'm a current sophomore. Like,
Everyone, it's like, if you don't graduate in 2 years, you suck.
well, I have so many friends who turned 21 like the spring of their graduation. I'm like, I've been 21 like my whole college experience.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, and I mean, I'm the opposite, right? Like, I'm starting very late because I took time off for racing. But it is the whole like kids, you know, skipping grades
Yeah.
and then going to Harvard and like missing a lot of the kind of classic high school experiences that you would want to have. Like, that's all true.
Yeah.
One of the kids who lived next door to me my freshman year at Harvard was like 16,
Yeah.
I think. Like,
Like,
he
who
celebrated
are
his
you?
17th birthday a couple weeks after I celebrated my 20th. And I was like, well, we also had a conversation one day where he's like, I'm feeling really bad. Like, I feel sick. And I was like, you know,
Is that
okay,
puberty?
like,
What's
have you been sleeping well? Have you been eating well? And he was like, well, I've had nothing but cereal for a week in a row. And I've been
Oh.
sleeping 3 hours a night. And I was like, okay, like,
Yeah.
I'm
Maybe
gonna,
you weren't ready to live
like, go
alone
buy
yet.
like a I was like,
he's
go buy a
deficient on
sandwich and then
everything.
like nap. And he was like, I feel so much better, thank you. I was like, whoa.
I mean, college is about learning how to be an adult more than anything else.
But that's, I think, the fundamental where the stakes are, where I differ, right? Like, that's where the paths diverge, is
Yeah.
that I had to learn how to be an adult in a very, very particular environment that does not translate to other types of adulting.
Totally true.
So I know how to adult in an extremely specific way. And all of my like socialization when I was going through adolescence was with mid to late 20s guys.
Yeah.
So my style of interacting with, like, for example, other girls, I have a really hard time communicating with other girls because I'm like, I don't know how to like sugarcoat things. Like, I just am very direct, and when I'm mad, I just like get mad. It's like the classic guy, like
you haven't
guys
learned
don't
passive
like
aggression yet?
well, it's not that all the time. It's just like I'm very used to like the racing. It's not just guys, it's also like racing people where you're like
Germans.
very aggressive, you talk over each other, and you're super straight up. That's one of the things I love about all the Germans at BMW. They're super straight up. Like, there's no kind of talking about the weather on the phone. They like tell you what needs to happen, what the objectives of
You
the
need
phone
to be at
call
the
are.
track at 3 o'clock today. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah, but like, it's super efficient.
Yeah.
And that's how I've grown up. That's how I live my life. And I have a really hard time to be like, oh, so, you know, like, what's up? It was really freezing today. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that is some people, you know, when Danica did interviews and stuff, and I'm sure the comparisons happen, but specifically they were like, oh, she comes across like X, or she doesn't come
Yeah.
across like a, quote, normal woman, like that is big air quotes, or she's not friendly. And it's like, no.
She's not feminine.
Right.
Yeah.
But if she also came up in what is a male-dominated like industry, you are going to develop a personality that is more like the people around you, because that's how we develop our personality. So she just probably acted more like, the other guy drivers around her, and everyone was like, this is so strange. It's like, not really. I mean, if you were adopted at one and then raised in a totally different country, you will probably have a different personality than where you were born. And it's kind of like similar.
Chris Harris.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's
kind
not
of
a bad thing. Like, you're
No, it's
adapting
not.
to the circumstances. And I would argue that a ton of the qualities that I have learned from the racing industry are things that I really like about myself. Like, they're things that I feel like contribute to my ability to be a productive, passionate human being. And I think a lot of, and the takeaway, right, the flip side of that is that I do think that I have lost permanently a lot of the experiences that a lot of people remember from college as like, oh my God, guys, remember that time that we did XYZ? That was so fun. Like, we just loved fucking around. So like it's very hard for me to get into that headspace. So it has its good and bad sides, right?
Yeah, but you get the adrenaline rush of racing. You get a lot of.
I'm not lacking in life opportunities.
No, for sure. But I know what you mean because you're physically not around for that kind of stuff. The good news is, I'll tell you what, having been there, your late 20s, especially if you get a little more budget, are actually way more fun anyway. And your 30s are even more fun than that.
Yeah, I mean, I also think like.
Best.
I was very, very stressed out my freshman year of college of having the stereotypical college experience because everyone was like, this is the best 4 years of your life. Like, I know that you're racing, but you should really be taking advantage of this. So I really tried to proactively create this persona for my boyfriend, like a lot of my friends from outside the college world will tell you, like, I really tried to like morph myself into this character that could really love college. And I love the academic side of it, which is the part that everyone hates. Like, I love learning.
Yeah, the irony. Although maybe not at Harvard. At Harvard, I think there's probably more
people
academics.
People really enjoy talking about their theses, which I like. Yeah, again, all the stereotypes you think about Harvard, they're all true.
There's a whole with honors. There's a whole movie about a Harvard thesis. The movie With Honors with Joe Pesci and Brendan Fraser. Is that like your Bible?
I know what you're talking about. I haven't seen it in years. And I only remember bits and pieces of it, but yes.
The fact that you've seen it is a miracle because it's like 30 years old.
Yeah, right? I think Joe Pesci's like a homeless guy who they think is the ghost of Walt Whitman or some shit like that.
I don't know, I missed the learning part of college. I just don't. When I was there, it just felt so forced that I didn't enjoy it as much. But in hindsight, I'm like, oh, it's nice to know new things, learn new things. Yeah,
I also think I approach Harvard with an extremely specific perspective because I really don't. Like, it would actually be an advantage to my career for me to drop out, right? In a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Short term.
So everything that I'm doing academically is like, I really love it. And it is a choice for me instead of like prescribed and very formulaic, because every time I go to class, I'm like, I could be doing other things, right? Like, the opportunity cost of going to this class is kind of high. So I'm going to really enjoy it. And like, if I'm not going to do this reading well and actually glean information out of it, I'm just not going to do it at all, because I could also be like answering emails or like on the sim. So
yeah, I mean, that's a really balanced perspective. First off, for a 21-year-old, congratulations on being really that level-headed. That's amazing.
Thank you.
But like, I think you're totally right in that you have probably a very long career racing, and the time you gain doing that or answering those emails versus not finishing a Harvard degree, I think is a very penny smart and dollar stupid. You should definitely get a degree.
Absolutely.
The good news about Harvard is once you graduate, no one gives a shit what your grade point average was. Nobody, you know what I mean? You got that H, you got that little tie that they
God, like the sweaters with the
and then you get to talk about my Harvard vest and my Harvard tie.
If I ever become that person, just shoot me, please.
Bro, you dropped the H-bomb like 75 times on this show already.
I'm sorry, it's a huge part of my life. I try not to.
That's fine, but don't say if I ever become that person.
I'm already
You're there.
That person.
You're there.
I know.
You said you like straight talk.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself, Harvard.
Some people would just be like, it's hard to balance school and racing.
Yeah.
That's the other side.
Yeah.
I would argue that it's. I actually do think that Harvard specifically over other schools. This sounds really weird.
You hear that, Yale? Fuck you. Continue.
Yeah.
No, it's a qualitative.
I went to the shitty Ivy League school, by the way. Mine sucked.
That is not true. But it's a lot of work in terms of quantity. But I do think that Harvard actually gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to leave if you really need to. Or some professors will. They generally leave it up to the discretion of the professors. But the fact that a lot of professors are fine with my not being able to show up to potentially a third of the classes is crazy. And I actually think that would not exist at a lot of other schools. I think in a very convoluted way, I could envision it being harder to balance a school that has a very rigorous attendance policy. And
I think there are certain schools that the student body is usually of this sounds dismissive, but a caliber. Stanford is known for this, where if you want to leave to do a creative semester, you can, because they usually go, okay, we've picked people that are usually going to go create really good things or learn something they'll probably apply back to this school. Mm-hmm. So it's probably beneficial to us, Stanford, to let them do this. And they kind of trust the students to do that. But it would also depend on the student. I'm sure there are state schools, other schools, where if a certain student that was displaying really mature behavior and had a good reason to take a break, they might make an allowance. But generally, when people ask for excuses, they're okay, Tom, this is your fourth time coming drunk to the office. You can't get out. But I want to learn to go boating.
Yeah, they can't say that they want people who are well-rounded and do these exceptional things without assuming they'll continue to do them once 100%.
That was actually the main reason that I ended up choosing Harvard, which sounds, I guess, kind of horrible, but it was because of their absences and leave policy. It was if you, their time frame for when you have to let them know whether or not you're taking the semester off goes pretty far into the semester. Up until today, actually, because it's the seventh Monday of the semester, you can choose to take a semester off.
Today, it's March.
Yeah,
March,
no,
March.
my finals are in 6 weeks, maybe.
Wow, that's wild.
So if I were to get if I had an opportunity present itself in, let's say February, where I was this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of kind of financial implications, right? Depending on when you choose to take time off, you can actually still get a full refund into the semester.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Wonder how many half semesters you can put together.
You have a housing deposit
yeah, of course.
that you have to put down that you don't get back. But other than that, you get your full semester of tuition back until decently into the semester. But up until today, if I got a call and I was I really want to do X race, but it's in the middle of a final. Theoretically, if I did not care about losing the tuition, I could drop, and it wouldn't show.
You could ask Mille to be listen, I need another round of tuition. Can we talk about that timepiece? Look at that thing.
Yeah.
She's got the wrist flex right now. This girl's sponsored by Richard Mille. She's representing very, very well. It's a very nice timepiece.
You're a big watch guy, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. I recognize quality when I see it. Let me see that shit. Yeah. Do you have your own model yet?
Not yet.
Are you working on that? Is that the dream? Oh, it's good.
I don't know.
These things are dope. The curved cases.
The
very,
curved
very
cases,
nice.
I love the curved case. It's super comfortable.
That just makes so much sense.
What these guys do, they really innovate with materials, composites, carbon materials, and they really build. There's a lot of scenarios in which traditionally you are not supposed to wear a watch while you shoot a gun, while you play tennis, while you drive race cars, while you do all these athletic situations.
I wear it 24/7.
Yeah.
I wear it when I'm working out.
And Richard Mille, which is the correct pronunciation, says, fuck all that. We're going to make a watch that's specifically for these athletic activities. Mm-hmm. And they're dope.
They're very cool. This is not
it's a beautiful piece.
An analysis of the watch, but they're also some of the nicest, kindest people I've met in my entire life.
That's
I'm not
a big name sponsor. Did you hook that up? How does something
LinkedIn.
like that get hooked up?
LinkedIn.
Fuck out of here. Really?
Yeah.
You hooked up with a company that sells 6-figure watches to sponsor your race car on LinkedIn.
It's baller.
I got lucky that they responded. I also think I happened to be reaching out to them at a point, from an authenticity standpoint, right? I actually do think that our brands align super well. One of my favorite racing moments was after I had signed a 1-year sponsorship. So they don't, what they tend to do, which is again really telling about them as a company and as a brand, they sign a lot of multi-year deals. And I had done a 1-year deal with them in 2018. I was still kind of getting to know the brand, and I had dinner in New York City with the woman who runs communications for the US, who was my main contact, and Richard. And it was my first time meeting him. And I kind of didn't know what to expect about a guy who is that successful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he asked me what he could do to advance the placement of women, women's place in the automotive industry. And he was saying he was considering.
Really teed that up, huh?
Well, no, it was a genuine question. Like, you could tell he was actually wondering what I thought about it. And he said he was considering, among many things, implementing a rule with basically like, you need to have a minimum of one woman on professional race teams. And I was like, no, don't do that. He was like, why would you not do that? Wouldn't that be a good thing? You have increased representation. Like, you need to actually walk the walk when it comes to things like that. And I said, I agree, but you're going to end up with a lot of really underqualified PR managers. Like, you can't put teams in a situation where they feel like they're being forced to hire someone, because they're going to hire people who shouldn't actually be there. And then he was like, okay, so give me an alternative. And I was like, you need to run programs that create sustainable ladder systems for women within the industry that integrate into programs in a very authentic way. Like, you can never force someone to hire a woman, but if you actually run good, like if you place already qualified women in positions of success, which there are a lot of very budget programs in the racing world that do not set people up for success from a driver's standpoint, like put women in places where they can succeed, and they will. And that's the test. And when people see that, they'll want to hire them. And then those women act as role models organically for the next generation of girls who are looking at getting involved in this industry.
Good
and
pitch. It's a good pitch. I like it.
But the fact that he took my advice, right? Like, he's sponsoring me right now. He's running a racing team with an LMP2 in Europe with Catherine Legg, who's a good friend. She's awesome.
Yeah, and
I'm
very
super
fast.
glad that she's running that program. She's super quick. And we had a conversation a few months ago about the kind of team choice and, the program they're running. And they're not scripted. Like, a lot of programs, particularly female-run programs or female-oriented programs, are huge budget programs because they're marketing expenses. They're not proper motorsports.
There was just a full
program.
Was it I'm sorry
New
for
York
not,
Times.
Yeah, it was the story about like the falling
sucks.
apart basically
Yeah.
of the all-female. Was it NASCAR? What was the all-female team?
No,
or
it was an IMSA.
It was IMSA.
It was
Okay,
an
I'm
IMSA.
sorry.
It was like a lot of my good friends. And I think it's really hard in scenarios like that because as a woman, you're, being given this opportunity to race. And as a race car driver, not a woman, you just want to go racing. So someone's giving you a car and a program and you're going to do it. But at the same time, it's really, I wouldn't blame any single driver for not being super selective in the programs that they're choosing, because you need to go where the programs are and where the opportunities are. But those opportunities a lot of times for women exist in spaces that are not actually well funded and aren't going to be competitive. It sets you up for the for reestablishing the tropes of like, oh well, it's an all-female team, like do they wear their race suits while they're making sandwiches, right?
Yeah.
So I think the fact that he listened to me from years ago and he's running with a super competitive team. The guys at Signatech are amazing. He has 3 competitive girls in the program.
Who else is there besides you?
So Tatiana Calderon and Sophia Floresh.
I haven't heard of them. What are they about?
So Tatiana is a test driver for Formula One. She is. Oh, are you looking her up?
Yeah. Zach was getting some imagery for us.
Yep. And Sophia Floresh is. I know less about her. I think she's a Formula 3 driver.
Alfa Romeo Formula One team.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting to see what they come up with.
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, I think drivers aside, the fact that he is putting the budget forward to have them run with a quality team means the world to me. Like, as someone who is a partner of the brand, that has single-handedly bought my loyalty, right?
Yeah.
Along with other things, along with the fact that they're a good brand, along with the fact that I think they culturally are a good fit for me. Like, they aren't, they could be full of themselves. These are nice ass watches.
I mean, the watches, it's a controversial watch in a lot of ways because especially the men's watches, much more so than that one, are big and in some cases quite garish looking.
Yeah, this is definitely not the most controversial of their watches.
No, that one's fairly mellow by their standards and quite restrained and you could even say tasteful. But they're, the Bubba Watson, the big giant white one.
I think it's badass.
I think they're cool. I really do. And if I had the cash, I would rock one. Maybe you can hook me up on the discount on the back end.
Maybe.
But some people think they're just flash for flash's sake, but there's some real technological achievement in those watches.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, again, the other thing that has sold me on them, I wasn't a huge watch aficionado before I started working with these guys. I started working with them because I had seen the watch on other drivers, right? Because they sponsor a lot of
there's a couple. Rubens Barrichello, I believe. Does he have his own? Is it not Rubens? Who?
Fernando Alonso.
Fernando
also.
Alonso's got one. Alan Prost has a cycling themed one. Yeah, there's been some.
They've expanded into a lot of different types of athletic groups, which is really cool. And they're sponsoring a lot of young female athletes, which again, badass, right?
Do you know the reference number of your watch? RM. No? Oh, you are not a good ambassador. That's there's the Alan Prost one. Pull that up. The Alan Prost one's really funky because it has some type of cycling odometer in it to track distance, and I don't know how it works, honestly. And it's curved for how he wears his wrist while holding a bicycle handlebar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if your wrist is bent up. Yeah. Then I think
and as you know, as someone who appreciates watches, technologically that is incredibly time consuming. It's super comfortable as someone who wears one every day, but the amount of effort that goes into creating a watch that has a curved barrel like that.
Or a watch with an odometer complication. I mean, there's real kind of craziness that's going on, especially Nadal, Rafael Nadal, the tennis player.
You should feel his watch at some point.
It's like 10 grams.
I can barely feel it in my hand.
Can you look up the weight of the Rafael Nadal Richard Mille?
You should stop at their boutique at some point.
I have dope.
Okay.
But the Nadal one is meant for playing tennis, which is one of the things you're literally the motion of swinging a tennis racket or a golf club is one of the things you're like never supposed to do in a watch. And
again, that was one of their first partners.
Yeah.
And it was super controversial because people were like, why would this guy, to your point, right, ever choose to put extra weight on his arm?
Yeah.
And then he continued to win, and they were like, what is this watch?
The weight, it's got to be, so by comparison, I have a carbon fiber and titanium G-Shock, which is the lightest watch I have, and it's 28 grams. So it's 1 ounce.
Yeah.
This thing has got to be less than that. Zach will
probably
find it.
half of that?
It might be half of that, but it's ridiculous how light it is. 2703. It's a real interesting color combo. It's meant to be seen on TV.
I'm the RMO701.
RMO701.
I don't know why. Yeah.
Because you're not a good brand ambassador.
I know.
That's why. What did that say? 10 grams? That's
no, it resists shocks.
Shocks up to 10,000 Gs. That's so awesome. What a great statistic to have.
It's also if you meet the people at like, for example, Alex and Amanda Mille. Mm-hmm. So they both work at the company. They're
kids
the two
of Richard?
Yep.
Okay.
I think the two oldest ones. They're like, again, don't necessarily have to be down to earth, and they're so nice. And I'm not just saying that. I do not say that about like a lot of people that I meet.
The people who design and sell really expensive stuff and the people who buy it are not necessarily going to be the same. They're very different.
And I also think it matters a lot that Richard didn't grow up with the brand. It's relatively recent.
Yeah.
So, I do empathize with them a bit in the sense like they've been able to watch their father succeed in a very similar way, to be very different scale.
With you and your dad too, and the club.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The club being successful.
It's been really cool watching the club get successful because I watch my dad working at like 2 a.m. and then I'm like, there are more people coming to the club.
Yeah.
You can watch that. And as someone who's growing up around that, I think it's good to have role models who you see work hard and then benefit from that success. Like it's very inspiring. So.
Totally. I totally am with you on that.
So I empathize with them a lot on that. And I think that they have learned a lot of their work ethic from their dad. And it's a good group.
Yeah. And the watches are really cool. I mean, I anytime you can get sponsored by a product that's not just going to support you, but that also makes a very high quality item that you can be proud to wear and talk about.
It's super authentic. And I think I've tried to live by that. And I got really lucky that like my first two sponsors kind of taught me unintentionally that like not all money comes in equal shades of green, right? I had two people who really believed in me and supported me and were mentors as well as people who were footing the bill.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had, Richard Mille was the first main sponsor that I started working with after ModSpace, and ModSpace was recently acquired. So I'm still in close contact with those guys, but ModSpace, the company that used to sponsor me, no longer exists.
Unfortunately, the non-competes won't have to, worry about that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But I think I had people who knew what it took. I have people who know what it takes from kind of a time commitment standpoint, and also from a development standpoint, right? I think even if you are God's gift to racing, it takes a lot of time to get used to different types of cars. It takes a lot of time for,
What are you driving this year?
This year, I'm in a BMW M4 GT4.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I love it. I love that
do
car.
you like driving it?
I actually really like driving it.
Yeah.
I think part of what I like about it from like a sales standpoint is it's a proper race.
Are you driving Will Turner's car?
Yeah.
Fuck out of here. I didn't realize you were driving Will's cars.
Yeah.
Oh, he's the homie.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Tacos for everybody.
Yeah, the taco site. So I was running a Girls with Drive program at Daytona, and the way that I run it is we wait until the track shuts down, and then they get to go into the pits and see what it's like, which is not an experience you normally get to do unless you have a hot pit pass, which are expensive as hell, and you have to be over 18. So these like 7 or 8-year-old girls get to kind of cruise, walk down the pits and see what's going on. And they were like, what's that light up sign that says tacos? I was like, that's where I pit.
The secret of our team.
Well, and it also
great.
prompted a conversation about like, but isn't this a professional sport? Don't you guys take yourselves really seriously? And I was like, no. Someone asked if race car drivers pee in the seat. It inevitably came up because they were talking about like all of the empty water bottles everywhere. I was like, I don't really want to answer this question.
So how is it driving the M4 compared to the cars you were in before?
I really like it. I mean, so I have had the opportunity now to drive, I'm trying to think, I guess 3 or 4 different GT4 cars.
Which ones before this?
So I've driven the BMW. I drove the Audi at the 25 Hours at Thunder Hill with Flying Lizard. The Flying Lizard guys are
R8
awesome.
GT4?
Yeah,
those are good.
The Flying Lizard guys are. It was a good program. The woman who was running it is named Erin Vogel. She's like.
Wait, were you there like 2 months ago? No.
No,
was
this
like a while
was
ago.
2
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
So I ran that car. Again, it was a good program, good team. So I think I got like actually a proper idea of what it's supposed to feel like.
Flying Lizard is a good team.
Super good team. And then I've run a McLaren because they're short mule.
Yeah. Those aren't bad.
They aren't bad either. Yeah, I've been really lucky. I've also run one of the older Porsche Caymans. So they came out with all sorts of new. Like I drove one. It was probably beginning of 2018, I think.
And now in this M4 with Turner, that's
me. That's the car I was driving. Yeah.
Yeah, that Turner's a real good team too. I mean, they've got a lot of wins, and they've got always a competitive car, and
it's good. I mean, I think I've been really. I've learned over the span of a couple of years how important it is to have like a good rapport with your team. People have this misconception that racing is an individual sport, but you are like your job is to drive the car at its limit that other people have given you, and you need to have the relationships with the people who are making sure that your car is good, right?
Yeah.
Not just for self-serving reasons, but because it's like kind of weird to establish a dynamic of like, I don't know how to describe it, I guess like employee-employer, like the gentleman driver style of racing, where you just kind of fly in and then drive it and leave.
I think it's looked at from the outside as like an individual sport, but it's really a huge team effort from everyone who sets the car up, develops the car, thinks about how they can problem solve in, if the conditions change, if the track changes, all that tiny stuff. And then if the driver can't go out and deliver what the engineers think that they should be able to deliver, like then it's almost the team, you're letting the team, it's like the pitcher letting the team down because everyone else caught the ball, hit the ball, did everything else they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's also a community in a way that people wouldn't, I think, really expect. Like, for example, Jim Bell and Darren from Flying Lizard. So I ran one race with them. It was a 25-hour race. It's kind of intense. You bond a little bit. But it was one single race. And every single time I see those guys at the racetrack, they're like, oh my God. And they give me a huge hug. They ask me how I'm doing. I ask them how they're doing. I get super excited when the Flying Lizard guys succeed because I know everyone on their crew. And I know Jim and I know Darren. I'm like, those guys totally deserve it. And you would find that, I mean, that's much more common than people would expect it to be at the paddock. Like, even when I'm not winning, I'm like, yeah, but like, those Flying Lizard guys, like, they really deserved it. So I think, it doesn't sting less, right? But I do think that there's a lot of actual wholehearted support that people would not anticipate across competitors.
Well, everyone knows how hard it is, I think. If you've been there for more than 5 minutes, like, this is a hard thing that we're all trying to do.
Yeah, and you appreciate, like, when you watch someone win, you're like, a lot of money and time and intelligence and money has been put into that program. But it's hard to raise money, and it's hard to use it effectively, and it's hard to, like, make sure that you're in the right place at the right time. Any strategy move at any point can make or break you. Like, it's racing is 99% lows, right? So when you watch someone succeed, you're like, the amount of effort that has been put into that on the back end is, like, inspiring.
I think that's probably a pretty good place to call it. That's very nice. So do we have anything from the people? Get in the super chat real quick. We do have a few. We can go to the people. That was I was just saying, because you're talking about it being a team, by the way. I just finished season 2 of Drive to Survive, the Formula 1 thing on Netflix, and at the end of the last episode, I'm not going to give it away, but Lewis Hamilton wins the championship in 2019. In case guys, spoiler. But
Mercedes
they show there's a group picture of there's a group picture of the Mercedes team.
Yeah,
it's a fucking 1,000 people. It's 1,000 people.
So they're implementing budget. They're implementing a budget cap in the FIA in 2021.
I think that's what they mentioned.
And I was actually talking to my boyfriend about this last night. Like, how do we were debating the pros and cons of pretty much incentivizing teams to, like, fire people when it's such a closely knit community. And, if you're trying to balance the competitive aspect of, like, the Haas team, right, which has, let's just say, like, 200 guys, versus Ferrari, which could have at any given point like 1,600, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. And is there really an alternative? I don't know.
Well, I think they just want to have closer racing, and I think they're trying to do, and they need to, because it's fucking boring, to watch, and there is the gap seems to be growing between the the haves and the have-not teams.
Well, and you see that across every different type of racing, right? I think that, the budgets in GT racing and sports car racing have totally skyrocketed as well. Like, the cost of running a GT4 car, in terms of the amount of sponsorship money I have to raise every year, is what it used to be to run a GT3 car in, like, a full WeatherTech championship a couple years ago.
Do you think that's just because people are raising their prices, or is there some other driving force behind this?
I think it's because, from a technological standpoint, the amount of development you need to put in just to make your car competitive from a setup standpoint,
so
like taking out the driver in order to set the car and part of what the goal of GT4 racing was to decrease that, right, from a technological standpoint, was to decrease that incentive to spend more money on development. Like, 80% of the parts on the M4 GT4 are stock from the M4, and it's still a proper race car. Like, there are a lot of different setup components you can change, but the amount that you can put on the car tends to depend less on the manufacturer and more on the series. So, for example, you can have tire sensors in SRO right now. I'm not sure. I don't think you can in IMSA. So there are all sorts of really weird restrictions, or like telemetry. You can't have telemetry in GT4 and IMSA. That's an attempt to cut down on the budget. But telemetry is hugely important when it comes to strategy calls and weather tech, right, in the series above.
Are you allowed to use telemetry during testing and not racing, or not at all? Oh, I guess, how would they even know?
Yeah, I don't know if they would theoretically know that. I think even... I would also say that the quality of drivers, and I'm kind of hedging my phrasing here a little bit, I think that the quantity of entrants, because it has gotten more expensive, has gone down. And as a direct result, the quality of driver, like the average driver that you would find in IMSA GT4 right now, is absurdly high. And that's true across most kind of pro racing series in the US.
Just because the price is so high,
just because the price is high.
There.
And, at this point, for example, in GS and IMSA, if you're like 1 second off, 1 to 2 seconds off, you are back of the pack. Like, you are not competitive at all. And that's really telling, because a few years ago, again, as you know, there were like 60 ST cars. Sorry, street tuner for anybody. So the category was called street tuner. It was closer to stock cars. There was basically no technological regulation on it. Like, you could theoretically develop the cars as much as you want within the, borders of the BOP, within those boundaries. But the cost, the barrier to entry was much lower. Like, you could get on a budget team for a much smaller amount, And the difference in driving ability was also huge. The guys at the front were like proper seasoned pros, like Bill Auberlen.
Yeah.
And the guys in the back were gentleman drivers who were then funding pro racers. So the racing industry has gotten closer to the classic third-party sponsorship model and farther and farther away from the gentleman driving model.
Oh, we're seeing fewer and fewer gentleman drivers in the IMSA teams. And if you're going, well, if it's going to cost me $3 million a year to run this team, I'm going to put 2 pros in there because fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also depends on, there are significantly more like properly factory-backed programs. And a lot of the AM drivers that have managed to stick it out in terms of like they're bringing their personal funding to the table have just been racing for so long that they're actually extremely good. Like
Boris Said was a gentleman driver. I mean, Boris Said started out as just a gentleman driver, and he's a beast.
Yeah, a lot of the guys, I mean, the people in IMSA who are bringing their own budget tend to be very quick still. And the people who bring their own racing budget, who try it for a couple races, who are back of the pack, tend to drop out pretty quickly because it's really demoralizing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, money can buy a lot of practice. I mean, racing is one of those things where you need some natural ability, but you can learn your way into the pack. Maybe not on a podium.
You can, and I think the barrier to like the gentleman driver in the back of the pack in IMSA is time, not money, right? And that's,
probably, yeah.
And that's what SRO tried to do last year when they split up. You know, they had the different GT4 categories. So they had like Pro-Am. What they basically tried to do was create a separate class for gentleman drivers who don't have all the time in the world to like constantly test and develop themselves as a driver and the team and the car, but still have the budget to spend and want to do this. And there was a lot of controversy about like, is this necessarily the right decision? Because racing's racing. Like, don't you just want overall winners? Because that's what we should be doing.
And they're like, oh, you naive people.
Right. So like, I guess I understand the argument as like a driver, right? Like when I go out, that would be, I guess, the equivalent of me saying like, well, I want to be the fastest girl. I'm like, okay, that means nothing. Like that, I don't care about being the fastest girl. If I'm second and then there's a girl that's faster than me, I'm still second quickest.
Yeah.
I'm also mad. But with the amateur class thing, like if you are paying your own way into this industry, if you're running in a pro racing series on a basic level, despite what a lot of the pros complain about, you do need to pass certain benchmarks in order to be able to compete. You can't walk on as someone who has literally never been in a race car and go into semi-pro, Pro-Am style racing. And if you pass the benchmark to go out there and compete, and you win in the amateur category in what is considered a pro racing series, that's pulling a lot of extra money into the sport, and it's generating enthusiasm from people who could bring money into the sport, who are like, this is really fun. Like, I'm on the podium, I'm spraying champagne. And it's really easy if you aren't raising that money, or if you have like a personal sponsor as a pro driver, to be like, well, we don't care about those guys, but they actually matter a pretty significant amount.
I figured they were probably more important than most would let on.
Yeah, they're super important.
A guy or a woman like that could fund. You know, you funded the whole team. You pay everybody's salary.
Yeah,
you're running shit.
Right, you're the reason that people have jobs.
Yeah.
And those guys are frequently villainized, but it's also like they're the source of a lot of the passion of the racing industry, and also what really is a pro driver, right? Like if you're racing in a pro series, like for example, what's that kid's name in Formula One that everyone always shits on?
Gasly?
No.
I don't know. Kid?
He
Ocon? Esteban Ocon?
Either way, there's this kid in Formula One.
Kimi Räikkönen.
Kimmy's awesome.
No, he is awesome.
He is awesome.
Never ever shit on Kimmy.
No, he's great.
But his dad his dad owns the team.
Oh, it's not Sainz.
No, Carlos is cool.
No,
he's
fuck.
Okay, but either way.
Leclerc? No.
He's awesome, Leclerc is actually
awesome.
a Richard Mille guy.
Yeah, he is.
Fact.
Oh, who is? I mean, we're gonna get roasted on Twitter later for that.
Yeah,
for not knowing
I'm sorry. I'm a pro driver. I should know this.
It's the son of the telecom person, right?
Yeah. Okay, but long story short, right? Like he gets roasted all the time because his dad pays his way through. He's also like not far off the pace in Formula One.
Lance Stroll. Everyone's yelling Lance Stroll.
Oh, yeah, Lance Stroll. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
So Lance Stroll gets roasted all the time because he doesn't like I don't know, he's not employed by a manufacturer directly, right? Like his dad pays for it. But he's also like, he's good, he's there. So I think to a certain extent, it's very hard to define what pro driving really is, because I was also sponsored in a series that wasn't considered pro driving. Like the opposite can also be true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fair.
I think part of like adulting in racing is learning that the word pro driving is
like
really
pretty non-existent
for all but like 25 people.
Yeah.
Who was in the show?
Scott Pruitt.
Scott Pruitt was here.
Scott's
yeah.
a pro.
Yeah, but one of the things he was talking about was like all of the racing drivers in the world compete for like 100 paid drives.
Yeah.
and like the number of people that are
that's the reality
straight
of it.
up paid, get a check for driving, don't have to bring any money to the table, like really, really
borderline
small.
non-existent.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, that's why like I think people are starting to realize I fell into a business model of raising third-party sponsorship money and then going to third-party customer teams and paying, just because I realized that the biggest leverage point I had was as a woman in racing that was up and coming, cared about school, right? Like my marketing leverage was how I was going to get the track time I needed to actually get quick. And people will shit on me for that, right? It's like, well, you only got this opportunity because you're a woman in racing. And I think that to a certain extent, they actually are right. I also think that I would argue that you can turn anyone into a marketing story if you are savvy enough.
It's probably true.
But I also think that it was much easier for me to like get the seed funding, right, so to speak, that I needed. So, and then when that happened, I got the track time. I actually got pretty good. But that's like, do you qualify that as pro? I was running around in a spec Miata. Like, I don't.
There's that dude Alex Albon who's racing for Red Bull right now, and he only got his seat in like F2 because the government of Thailand was looking to develop Thai racing drivers, and he got his whole ride from like visitthailand.com.
Okay, but again, like, don't shoot the messenger. You know what I mean? Like he figured it out.
You use what angle you got.
And I think more and more racers are figuring out, like Scott Pruitt, right? Like there's a very limited number of actual paid rides, and the chances that you're going to get them are pretty slim. And for me, like I'm also a student at Harvard. This is something I can commit the equivalent of a full-time job's worth of time to. It's not something I can fully travel 100 hours a week for, which is what you kind of have to do for a job like that.
Yeah.
So the only way that like people are starting to realize that you can raise third-party sponsorship money and then go to teams instead of going to teams and being like, look, I'm really quick.
Yeah. That seems frustrating and almost like bang your head against the wall, just trying
pointless.
to knock on
Well,
teams'
and then there's
doors.
the inevitable Instagram post of like, yeah, I'm walking around with my helmet on. I'm like, go talk to companies. Like fly to LA, right?
Do you think that was a way that racing happened from like a past era where people could be real fast, show up, a team goes, we like you, we'll put you in the car, we'll figure out the rest. And a lot of people probably wanted to do that because they love racing. They don't love selling themselves. They don't love marketing meetings. But nowadays you kind of have to play that. And it's whether you want to be a pro surfer or a driver or something, like it's better if you can get the attention of marketing and then go approach a team because you're like, these people believe in me and I have some money, so you're not risking as much of it, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think it's changed because the technology has taken away a lot of the different technology has made the sport safer, which takes away the kind of emotional and physiological barrier to entry of like, am I willing to die doing this? I mean, that sounds kind of stupid, but like that has been not taken away. It has been drastically reduced.
Yeah.
And it would have weeded a lot of people out once upon a time. And also technologically.
1968, where it's like, you have a 1 in 4 chance of dying this weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are quick and you're like, hey, employ me, you're like, okay, there are a limited number of people that can get the job done and
James
also
Hunt
are
is
willing
not
to
getting
die.
a job right now.
Yeah. No, like, well, James Hunt's super marketable.
That's true. He's very good looking.
Had a story.
He could probably pull it off.
And he has a story, and he's Playboy, all that stuff.
But he has a story. Like, I think he's actually an example of someone who like would still have a job, but there are a lot of like the classic legends, I think, that we think of now who like may not have been able to make it up the ranks.
I wonder if there is that's an interesting conflict, because you have racing drivers are known for being like very measured in their public kind of appearances because they're sponsors don't fly off the handle, don't throw like a helmet through a window, don't have a personality a lot of times. And I think the audience is pushing back on that now. We're all celebrating when someone on F1 like flips somebody
really
off
bad.
or just like acts like a human being, and everyone's like, thank you, because for a long time companies, they're paying a lot of money. They want to make sure that you represent the brand well. But do you think that makes it hard for someone to stand out if they don't have a very obvious edge?
No, I mean, I think that is something you can manufacture, right? I think that's something that you can create if you're really that determined.
But do you think because companies don't want people to have anything that's too outside the boundary, does it make it hard to have a personality that is special and to stand out from a marketing perspective?
No. I mean, I think you need to start with your end goal, right? What's the target market of a sponsor that you're seeking? So for me, where I've had the most success is not because I'm a super controversial human, but because I'm a relatively successful female racer and also someone who cares deeply about education. So I've had the most success specifically with companies that look to market to women. 80% of the purchasing power for cars in the US are female. So that matters a lot to a manufacturer and to car companies, and to people who care about education. I work with Girl Scouts, right? I work with companies that really value the fact that I am actually pursuing school. And that would not be true of a lot of other companies. And I would say for those people, you just have a different market, and you need to pinpoint exactly what that is as specifically as you can, and then knock on their doors literally until they're willing to sit down with you.
Is always good advice.
Yeah.
Not stalker level, but put yourself physically in the place
I
you
have
need to be.
borderline gone stalker level with a couple
Yeah, you're
of
not
people.
very
It's worked out for
threatening,
me.
honestly. If it was me doing the same shit you were doing, I'd be in prison now, probably.
If you knocked on my door and were hi, I'm going to sit here until you can take a meeting with me,
Exactly.
I would be who is this man?
Yeah, the reactions are very different. A couple questions from the people. Anything specific relating to racing? Oh, MB is Frenchie wants to know, should I get a deeply discounted DBS Superleggera Coupe 100K off, or how far off that was the naturally aspirated AM engine from the DBS? I like the NA V12. I think the turbos are more fuel efficient and you get that huge 700 horsepower number, but I don't think that power is usable, and I think that the NA V12 is glorious. I would get that. What is that? What was that
Which
Miguel
one?
say there?
His electric RC car has straight cut gears that sound awesome at 40 miles an hour. What if electric cars have mechanical gear noise instead of fake Jetsons noises?
I think most people would not find that particularly desirable. I've been in some racing and performance kind of one-off Pikes Peak electric car build, and that gear whine is not what I would call pleasant. I think the Jetson sounds of the... Have you been in a Taycan yet? Or
A what?
A Porsche Taycan Turbo S?
No.
Wait till someone gets one up at Monticello. They're batshit.
Hello, can I drive it?
Yeah, no,
I promise
they're
I'll be
fucking
careful.
crazy. It pulls harder than your race car, dude. And
Really?
yeah, they're nuts. And but they make a sound that I would describe as angry Jetsons car.
Oh,
that.
that's badass.
It's the shit. It's
pretty cool.
Inside and outside the car. Both. It's fucking cool. What's that one? Evan is a question for Aurora.
Do you have a seat for Sebring?
What does the rest of it say?
The rest of it says, I'm adding a second car to cover all bases. Now I'm realizing that 3 is better. When does it stop?
Oh.
How many cars? I think that he transitioned from racing
you
topic to he's just buying cars.
Okay.
I
Because
thought it
I
was
saw
like
him adding a
multi-racing
second
car, yeah.
car, and I was
He
like,
didn't mean a race team.
Yeah.
He wasn't
Okay.
talking. He doesn't know what a
I
race
was like,
team.
second car?
No, turn your sponsor.
If he did mean
turn
that-
your sponsor thing off.
I would not show up for that meeting. You know what I mean?
I would say contact me on my social media. My email should, I think, be attached. But if not, DM me. I know your name is Evan.
Are you going to Sebring?
I will talk to you. I will be at Sebring. Yep.
That's a
But
party.
I would still love to hear, even if I'm already at Sebring, I would love to hear what this guy's up
He
to.
doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't.
Bring another person with you if this person wants to have a meeting.
Yeah, no.
We made that up. He doesn't want to have a meeting. What does that say? Aurora Straus's name is shockingly close to 2 of the greatest sedans of the 90s. The Aurora, the Oldsmobile Aurora, of course.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you mean the Stratus?
He does.
Oh, interesting.
the Dodge Stratus?
I've been told, people make jokes about the Oldsmobile Aurora all the time, but I've never.
It's not a good car.
Well, would you rather race in a spec Dodge Stratus or a spec Oldsmobile Aurora
A
series?
Stratus.
Definitely. Do you ever see the Stratus touring car?
Yeah.
The Dodge Stratus
Yeah.
touring car is actually not a bad looking race car.
Getting a video.
Yeah, the touring car kind of good. I mean, look at that. Even the
I
red.
think all race cars look pretty good.
That's a pretty good looking race car
is a
right
good
there.
looking
Looks
race
very.
It looks like a Mondeo. It's a Mondeo with a Chrysler grill on it, basically. But that
like
is
that
right
wrap.
at home. And hell yeah, right?
I like that wrap.
You could do that exact throwback livery on your car, but just make it say Strauss instead of Stratus.
That's funny.
That'd be awesome.
That's super funny.
Only me and Zach would understand the joke,
True.
but we'd be fucking about it.
The whole like.
You want to pay for the side of the race car? Then sure.
Nope. Racing is expensive.
Oh man, what did I say? Brandon says, shout out from Torrington, Connecticut.
Oh.
What do we think of the upcoming season of Formula? What do we think the upcoming season of F1 will bring, especially with the coronavirus? A lot of
Oh
empty
my God.
stands.
Okay, I'm worried that the IMSA races are going to get canceled with coronavirus.
Have you gotten any preemptive updates
So they're
on that kind of
sending us
shit?
emails and like we're closely monitoring the situation.
Yeah.
And all of the fans have been they're running Formula One races right now without fans. And for me specifically, like, okay, at every single race weekend I run my Girls with Drive programs. I probably pull in well over 50 girls a race weekend. I don't know, are they considered fans, right? Like I get them normal tickets. That's how I get them through the door before.
I think they're fans.
Yeah, like I don't know if I can bring them in. That's like gray
Does
area.
it happen during the race or is it a different day?
It happens during the race. So they come 2 different days for 2 different educational programs. Alternative, right? I run VIP experiences for like higher level sponsors. I usually just get them normal tickets before they come in, and then I have a hospitality suite for them. Like, can I get them in?
They're definitely not letting that happen.
They're definitely not letting that happen
if they
because
cancel
they
fans,
bring in
they're canceling
guests.
all that shit. Yeah,
and
yeah.
like that's how I make money. So
I don't know what to tell you, dude. That sounds shitty.
So at some point, if they're saying like, well, we'll still run the race, but we won't let anyone come in, I'm like, okay, but I have now lost half of my budget.
I've had
this
multiple
race.
gigs canceled as well. I had a gig that's in a couple weeks that was emceeing an event that was canceled. The whole event was canceled, and I've had 2 press launches canceled.
Really?
And I've had another 2 press launches that I write for Road and Track.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Hearst has a no travel ban on their employees.
Oh,
so I
boy.
have 2 press launches that I'm doing in California that other people were supposed to go to, but I have to go because I can drive there because I don't have.
Oh, that's kinda
they're not
funny.
letting people fly. I just got Travis's seat in the 911 Turbo launch at Laguna
Sorry,
Seca.
Travis.
Oh, really?
Travis isn't
Aw.
allowed to
I will be
fly
there.
here.
Oh, that's
Hey,
horrible.
good for you.
Yeah, so I got his seat at the launch.
So you
I
lost
mean,
2
good
and
for
gained
you,
2.
but
I'm
poor
sorry.
guy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for them, but
Yeah,
damn.
I am a little concerned about like. So you missed this right before you came in. I got an email from my economics professor. My exam is online now
Because of the coronavirus?
because of the coronavirus.
Fuck
because they
outta
don't want
here.
so many people in one exam room at once. I was like, this is
How do
so
you- but
nice.
you can
Except
cheat.
I'm flying back. So my schedule right
That's what
now.
I said.
The whole point of exams is that you take them in a room where
I
you
know,
can't
where
have
you
your
can't
shit.
cheat. I'm sort of like, what do you expect to happen with this? But I'm taking a red eye back on Tuesday
It's
night
better to
from all
protect
my.
the future economic of America than the integrity of the future
Yeah,
of
these
America.
are your
my
future economists. You want to make sure they survive. I mean, I do think as it pertains to colleges specifically, like obviously you don't want to be a part of coronavirus spreading, but like I'm not
You're not
a target
carrier.
of coronavirus.
No.
I'm a carrier. I'm not gonna.
Zach's dad is a doctor, and I pretty much defer all medical.
I'm the
And
TST doctor.
So like 4 days ago, the update from his dad was that there were a few of the patients at the hospital he works at, and maybe it's overblown. If you're healthy, it doesn't seem like such a big deal. Yesterday or today, the update was, this might be kind of bad.
You don't want to get it.
You don't
Well,
want
and
to
I think,
get
and
it.
like in the scheme of things,
No, it's small.
I'm gonna be devastated if like a race is canceled, but I'm also gonna be like, okay, obviously someone dying is significantly more important than my race being canceled.
Yeah, no, there's like online hysteria, but if they're really canceling all these big events,
No, it matters,
like,
because
they
there's-
canceled the
I mean-
Geneva Auto Show.
Well, and stuff like that, like a lot of money goes into prep for this.
Oh
Like
my
I'm
God.
not going to not pay my team for the hours that they've put in to prep the car.
Yeah.
Like that is not, that's completely out of the question, as I hope it would be for everyone else who's racing.
Is there an insurance policy against it? Do you have like a force majeure insurance policy against like if the whole thing gets canceled, you can file a claim? Maybe.
I don't know. I don't think so. But
Maybe
either-
the sponsors might.
The sponsors, I mean, some sponsors definitely might, but either way, I think it's kind of, I actually do have a clause in one of my contracts that I remember reading that was like, if it's an act of God
Yeah.
or some like pandemic, then you aren't subject to the bound, to the terms of the contract.
It probably is. I mean, if you're the one bringing in the money to pay the team, who knows how that gets messy.
But at the same time, like, that's a very macro way to look at it. Like, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, like, I know the mechanic working on my car, like, he's gonna get paid.
Totally.
So I think, like, again, in the scheme of things, not a huge deal, but I don't think it's necessarily a like, oh, well, we don't do Sebring, so we'll just do another race later in the year, because the budget's still gone. Like, IMSA has still put forth the money to, like, plan events and to hire people who are getting paid hourly to, like, be track
sell
directors
hot dogs and whatever,
do whatever shady crap goes on in the back of Sebring.
Yeah,
someone
has to erect these stripper poles. I mean, honestly,
my first time seeing a stripper pole was at Sebring.
Was it attached to the back
I was
of
like
a Buick
11 or 12.
Riviera?
Yeah,
attached to a car.
Was it? Because I saw that.
It was. No, it was.
The stripper mobile.
And I was driving
with the Christmas
and
lights.
I was eating ice cream in the back of a golf cart with my dad, and he was like, just. What's that? I was like, what?
You were like, this firehouse makes no sense.
It's like, I don't understand. What are they escaping from?
Exactly. This jungle gym needs more budget.
Yeah, racing. I will say, racing is a horrible place to take a kid that you do not want to, like, grow up very quickly.
Yeah.
Because the number of things that I learned as a direct result of jokes from, particularly Sebring. But
listen to Dinner with Racers, and you'll learn so much about how things used to be, how bad they were. Like, it's a great education.
There is so at one point, maybe this is too graphic for the Smoking Tire podcast. I don't know, whatever.
No,
but at one point in 2017, at one point a few years ago, I'm not going to specify anything in detail because I don't want to incriminate people. But I was filming this, like, mini documentary, and these two female videographers had come to Laguna Seca, and they wanted to just follow me around during my daily routine during a practice/qualifying day. I was like, okay, sure. I was probably, I guess, I was 18 or 19, so I was, like, just barely of age, and I definitely looked like I was 12. And these, like, very innocent, know nothing about racing girls were walking around with a video camera and wanted to get footage of me, like, showing them around the car. And I opened up the car, and there was this huge dildo in the race seat. And I was like, oh, that's funny.
Wow.
Like, I'll just throw it out. But the racing team thought it would be funny. And these poor girls were like,
traumatized.
What? Why is this here? This is explicitly discriminatory. This is misogynistic. And I was like, whatever. Like, I probably first saw these at a racetrack when I was, like, 14. But there's all sorts of.
Of course, it's in
like,
an area
that
where
crap
there's, like,
still
only
goes down
men.
all the time.
Like, of course, that was bought by a man to elicit laughter from other men.
No. It is not even remotely like it was an extremely platonic joke. Like, you guys will get it, right?
Yeah, if you're talking, I would call it. It's mildly creepy, but it's okay.
Mildly creepy.
I'll give it a pass.
It was definitely concerning given the given the context, right? Like, if someone's filming me, maybe don't put it in there. Especially
like now.
Especially, I actually think
really
if they'd done it 2 years later,
if they had done it now, they wouldn't have jobs. But okay, I'll give them a pass.
Yeah,
I'll give them. I'm sure
that
it was
joke,
I'm sure it was a learning experience.
I bet that
everybody.
dildo was used for the same joke in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Like, every woman who's ever raced,
that thing has probably been around since, like, the Formula 4 years.
That dildo
like
is going to be on Dinner with Racers soon.
It turns out Francois Sever.
Yeah, no, but I think, like, jokes like that are still, like, they still happen, but I actually think they're probably happening a lot less specifically in the span of the last year, right? And I also think, again, this is probably why I have a hard time socializing with non-racing people. I was like, whatever.
I was funny in the race car. When I put the dildo in my professor's chair at Harvard, he didn't get it.
He didn't get it. He thought it was inappropriate. You called it harassment? I don't know.
Do the guys on the race team, do they share hotel rooms when they travel?
Yeah.
You should leave coconut oil in every one of their rooms and be like, look, you guys are by yourselves for a while. It's just you two together. You don't have wives or girlfriends here. Thought this might help.
Oof.
We can make a whole list of ways you can fuck
real bad.
mates, I think.
I think the problem is, for me specific, there are all sorts of things that, like, when I develop a rapport with a team, I consider really funny and also not weird at all, that, like, I cannot do with a team that I haven't been with
Fair.
Of course.
for a long time.
Yeah.
One of those, and this sounds so, like, you wouldn't even think about it, is changing, right? Because all the drivers and all the crew change in the same trailer. And I just don't even really think about it. But there is always that awkwardness the first time really the first few times I'm on a race team.
Everyone does this.
Where, well, yeah, it's like you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to like come across as creepy. It's coming from the right place. And I also don't want to like freak them out by just stripping. So there's this weird like, well, do you want me, like, I'm comfortable, but do you want me to go into the driver's lounge? Like, there are people in the driver's lounge. I don't want to kick them out. They're looking at data. They're doing very important things.
Yeah.
There was a period of time when I was very small. I hadn't hit my growth spurt yet, so I used to walk into one of those little closets where they keep like spare brakes,
helmets,
That's hilarious.
and then I would change in there, and then I would just like reemerge.
They put you in the little name tag
I can't quite
for
do
you
that
on the door?
anymore. Yeah, it's currently occupied.
Oh man.
But yeah, there's weirdness like that where like once you establish a rapport with someone and they get that you're not going to freak out at them for like seeing you put on your Nomex, it's fine, and it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be any different because I'm just another racer. I'm just putting on Nomex, like I'm wearing the same exact things as you. But there is always that kind of like
better to be too careful.
Definitely better to be too careful.
Yeah.
But the goal is to establish like a lack of difference, in my opinion.
It's a noble goal, but man, we gotta ride this line. I'm pretty sure I know how not to be a shitbag towards women that I work with. But still, you gotta be up here.
Well, also with racing specifically, it's very like that particular context is very strange because it is like I personally want to establish as little difference as possible between me and any other driver they're working with. Like, I don't want you to treat me differently. I don't want you to be nicer to me. Like, I want you to act like I am any casual, like mid-20s pro guy, right?
Dildos in the seats.
No, but that is right. Well, and that's the problem is these girls were like, oh my God, that's blatantly misogynistic. And I'm like, well, it's kind of more complicated than that because that to me is mildly creepy, but also establishes the fact that they aren't really thinking of me as that different from another male racer, because if they were, they would be like, no, this is weird. You know what I mean? Like there are two sides to that. Obviously it's problematic. But
yeah, I'll let you navigate those waters. That's not,
you can decide if it's problematic or not. I don't think we need to tell you if it's problematic or not, but I can just tell you that if I was working with a woman, I wouldn't leave a dildo on her chair for fear of my job.
Yep.
I think that's also a very, particularly in the racing world, I think that dynamic has been established extremely recently. Like it has changed since I've been pro racing, which isn't that long.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It probably has. Dude,
I'm sure there's some really interesting questions now, but
nope.
No, but the comments would be terrible.
Oh, there's just one there about what's the one at the bottom? Well done, Aurora, on finding what makes you happy. Scroll to the bottom.
Thank you.
Oh, if you're able to... Oh, it's the Vonnen thing. So I just drove this really cool thing. There's a company called Vonnen that's making an aftermarket hybrid system for the Porsche 911. So you take out the flywheel, put in an electric motor, put in a battery, put in a motor controller, and you get 150 electric horsepower at the flywheel. It's pretty cool. And it's not portable yet in the sense that... The one you can buy, you can take out and put in other cars. But the idea is that it is a semi-modular unit, so you could...
theoretically transfer it from...
any car. Yeah. And so what was the question about that? If you were transferred from car to car, which cars would you want to try them in so that the money can be justified? It's also very expensive. One day it might not be as expensive. They know it's 75 Gs. One day it might not be 75 Gs. That's the idea.
But I mean, I would argue that like that's the type of thing that right now, given the price point, people are going to put in like a Ford GT, like something where like if you're already spending a significant amount of money, you want the extra kick.
You understand this. Thank you, Aurora. Some people are like, this is fucking stupid. It's like, no. This is for the person that's already got all the other shit.
A multimillionaire.
Yeah, no, but here's what I think is cool about it is they have an air-cooled thing they're working on. So like old school 911s. Old school 911s.
That's really cool.
Have the worst dollar per horsepower ratio of anything.
Yeah, but they're fun.
Of course they are.
They're great, super balanced cars.
I have one. I love them. But if you want a 350 horsepower air-cooled 911 engine, that's a $75,000 engine minimum.
Yeah.
Maybe 90. So you could take this thing, put it in your air-cooled car, leave the engine alone, and have a plus
really
150,
nice.
150. Imagine filling the torque in a 930 turbo.
Right. I've never even thought about that.
Glorious! That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so maybe I would amend that statement a little. Like maybe like the slightly older, like super balanced cars.
Yeah, think about an older car that has great balance that you would want maybe a little more, but you don't want to hack up the mojo.
You don't want to compromise like the actual. Yeah.
And the car doesn't know the unit is there. it's in the flywheel. It adds or
That's so
sucks.
interesting.
Yeah, but again, the ECU doesn't know it's there, so the emissions controls aren't the car has no clue.
Right.
It's so cool. It actually works. I drove it a bunch. It works.
I have a follow-up question. Whoever answered that question, I'd be really interested to hear, like, this is a huge change in topic, but like what people think about electric race cars, like hybrid race cars. Is that the direction the industry is going in? People ask me that all the time. Like, as someone young, do you feel really bad about being a huge part of climate change? I'm like, I don't.
That is a fucking loaded, stupid
Really
question.
know.
You should respond, go interview the CEO of a cruise line. Fuck.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I
The
think
amount
like,
of fuel you burn is
but
like
it is a legitimate
nothing.
question, because I think the honest answer to that is, like, if someone handed me an all electric car right now, I'm not really sure how I would feel. But like,
Have you ever driven an electric car?
yeah, I drove the i8. It was actually pretty sick.
Did you enjoy it?
It was sick, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think part of what I love about a race car is like being on the banking at Daytona and upshifting and hear like, brrr, like I would
No one should make you feel guilty about that.
miss that. Yeah.
No one's gonna. First
I
off,
like gas.
no one's replacing gas racing anytime soon.
Yeah.
All the electric racing series suck, and
Oh my God. I went to a BMW Formula E race at one point a few months ago, and I was talking to Alexander Sims, and I was like, this is an awesome gig. And he was like, it is. I'm super thankful I have it. But we were talking about the actual specs of the cars, and the GTLM BMW that he used to race is significantly quicker.
yeah, that's the
It's really
problem.
interesting.
That's a problem. They're
Yeah.
cool at Pikes Peak. Like, I'm not anti the technology, but like, I think the daily drivers are great for
Yeah.
electric cars. Great daily
I
driver.
really liked the i8 as like a daily driver.
They won't hook you up. They must hook you
Well,
up.
I can.
Yeah, they hook you up. They
Can
don't
ask
get you
to
on the
switch out the 8
rotation
series.
plan.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to get an M8 competition.
I mean,
To drive in Boston
I'm sure
because
they'll
you
hook you
want
up.
softer suspension.
What?
I said, you're not gonna want the comp
no, I'm not
suspension.
driving it in Boston
No, you want
proper.
X5.
I'm driving it from Cambridge out into normal roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, normal M5.
And
Normal
it's
M5.
convenient because Turner's right by Harvard too. You
Yeah.
can go up to Amesbury. He'll throw a
Yeah.
tune on that.
That's true.
They got the street tune. Anything else we got there?
Did you, Aurora, sit in on IMSA radio last year?
Ooh, I did once. Yeah.
Someone says, what is John Hindau like in real life?
As charismatic as you would expect him to be.
He's very good at his job.
Yes.
He's extremely
Very good.
good at his
He
job.
speaks exactly the same way when he's not on the radio as he does when he's on the radio. Like, he's like a very animated, very well spoken guy. I would love working with him. Like, I think that radio, like working a radio on like a live sports, I don't know. I just think it's super cool.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of thinking on your feet. I was really stressed out the whole time I was doing it. I also sat in on
Sports
like the
broadcasting
SRO.
is hard.
I sat on in like SRO live broadcasting once, and they had me call one of the GT3 races at Sonoma, and the entire time I was like, I know who all these people, like, these people are my friends and they're in cars I know, but I'm just forgetting all of it right now.
Yeah, the pressure of live.
Yeah.
Right? Live sportscasting is a
Yeah.
very hard job.
It's very hard. No, but to answer your question, yeah, he's exactly what you'd expect him to be. He's badass.
Last question. Bill wants to know about fucking Corvettes. What does that say? Question about C6 Z06s?
He has a question about Z06 values. He's going to be in the market in 3 to 4 years for
3
a
to
weekend.
4
I
years.
know. I told him, I was like, we don't know what the economy is going to be in 3 to 4
3
years.
to 4 years. The coronavirus is killing us all.
Yeah,
buddy.
we're
Will they
all
appreciate
gone.
between now and then?
No,
Like, who knows?
What do you
Who knows?
appreciate? Has he ever seen a Corvette? Jesus Christ, man. Corvettes, there's two kinds of Corvettes. Corvettes from the late 1960s and all other Corvettes. If your Corvette is not from the late 1960s, it has a 0% chance of appreciating. The best Corvette is always the newest Corvette or the newest Corvette with a stick shift.
The new Corvette race cars, by the way,
C8Rs?
are really cool.
They look hot.
Yeah.
They sound good too with that flat plane motor.
They sound so good.
And because they don't have to have a trunk, can you pull up a C8R rear view? Because they don't have a trunk in the back. The problem with the C8 road car is you got to have that trunk behind the engine. They need it to fit golf clubs. That's like a thing. Seriously, that's a thing.
Really?
Yes, it has to fit
Like, you
golf.
actually measure it out?
Yes, but the
I've
R,
never played golf. I
The
don't know
R has
anything
no
about golf.
trunk, and therefore it has an opening in the middle, like fucking mid-engine cars are supposed to have, and the exhaust goes out there, and so the R looks good because you don't have that fat ass
Right.
trunk bustle. Makes it look like Mero. That's a hot looking race car right there. What's your dream drive? I mean, I know you have a great drive right now.
This is totally not going to be the answer that you want. A BMW Isetta, because the first time, I first saw an Isetta when I was like 16, and I hit the growth spurt you're supposed to hit at 13 at like 17, 18, right? So I was extremely short. The first couple of years I was racing, I was like 4'10" and needed pedal extensions. And I could fit in an Isetta.
Someone said you raced Fiat 500s with pedal extensions. My boss said he saw you. I think he met you JF Mutual, and he said you were driving like driver training or racing school with Fiat 500s with pedal extensions.
Oh, I know who he's thinking of. This girl named Emma Delatre.
Oh, he's wrong. He's gonna like this.
No. But happier. I have worked with JF before. He's awesome. He actually did. I think he did video work for me for Girls with Drive program that I was doing, because we used part of that video content in a BMW campaign about like driving for diversity. He's a super cool guy, but he's thinking of actually a good family friend of mine, Emma Delatre, who's a really great driver and also very short. And so she has a Fiat 500 with pedal extension.
I interrupted. Why do you want an Isetta? Because they seem like the most dangerous thing you could possibly drive.
Partially that. Like a huge part of it was that, right? I was 16 and I was like, yeah, I could die in this thing. It's sick.
But you die at 12 miles an hour. It's not like, I'm going to drive a Lotus 7.
To die, all you have to do is nudge it into a wall.
That was, okay.
Steering wheel in your face.
A couple months ago, I guess it was during my winter break maybe. So my boyfriend has an E90 and the starter broke. So we needed a rental car temporarily. And the cheapest, it was super cheap. And it was at the local airport. They had a bunch of smart cars. And we were like, okay, we're going to get a smart car for like $9 a day. It was the most fun, like definitely like top 3 most fun times I've ever had in a street car.
I understand.
Because the entire time, also, turning radius is insane. The entire time you're driving, there's the constant fear of death. You're like, if anyone hit me, like I'm just gone.
Yeah.
But it was super fun.
You know what one you want is the electric one. The electric one is the only decent smart car.
If I were to buy a smart car, I'd get an electric one.
Yeah.
Okay, but it
They're
actually
like
changed my
$8.
opinion. Every time I saw a smart car before this experience, I was like, really? Like, I don't know. I never got it. And then I drove it and I was like, this thing's
zips.
Super sketchy, but it zips.
Yeah.
It has a kick to it.
They're terrible, but in a very unique way.
Yes.
The 500E is the jam.
No, it
feels heavy, but it goes quick.
It has horrible handling.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Kind of. I like minis better.
With power are good.
Minis are great. The thing is, like, minis are actually very good handling cars, and they don't feel super small, depending on.
True. Some of them are kind of. They've gotten a lot bigger, but I feel like I can get on a highway in a mini and feel like I'm driving a car. And then if I did a 500, I feel like I'm on a unicycle, but it's got a canopy around it, and like the stereo kind of works. It just doesn't feel safe. I really don't enjoy it.
You have a racetrack on which you could keep an Isetta and actually like drive it around.
That's true.
in a somewhat safe place.
Right, and reasonably not like have other cars coming at you.
And the
like
good news about an Isetta is you could actually park it in the lobby.
That's true.
Really that's true. Like, all right, everyone, we're gonna have our driver briefing in the Isetta.
I'm just gonna pull in.
I think that's a reasonable, achievable dream car. You should just get one.
I know. Well, so when I was little, I was like, I loved punch buggies when I was a kid because they were always my set. Like I was very short until like relatively late in the whole like adolescence process.
Now you're like 6'8".
Yeah. I'm like 5. Well, we talked about this before I came in there. I was like, with the amount of caffeine I drink, I wonder if I should be like 6'2". And I just started drinking coffee when I was maybe 12.
Could have been a pro volleyball player, live on the beach.
I know.
No cars, no
I'd be
engineering.
making so much more money than I do racing.
But you couldn't fit in an Isetta.
Ooh, good. Sure.
That's true. But I couldn't fit in an Isetta. So that was That was the first like proper car that isn't a punch buggy.
Are you too young for Family Matters?
Yes.
Do you know what Family Matters is?
No.
It was a sitcom from the 80s with a famous character named Steve Urkel.
I've heard
Steve Urkel is like literally the stereotypical dork. Like the nerd, Jaleel White played him. He was the nerdiest person on television to that point.
That's someone who would be my friend.
And
like
his car was a BMW
Isetta. That's the thing. It's just like in terms of my personality, I understand that it is objectively speaking not even remotely close to the coolest car I could possibly get.
No, it's totally cool. Are you kidding me? Micro cars are awesome.
I think micro cars are cool. It matches my personality. It is a good car that is also extremely dorky.
Yeah, you should definitely get one.
Yeah, I've been thinking about
that's
it.
the kind of car where you get it and you have them plop it at your hotel in Monterey and you drive that shit around Pebble Beach in traffic during car week. You're the king.
You can drive it to your room into the elevator. Yeah.
I feel like if I'm gonna get an Isetta though, I should just like go out. Like I don't know.
You got to get Richard Mille livery.
Yeah, no, exactly. I need to make it seem like I think it's a race car. You know what I mean?
The Strauss livery.
Yeah, like
from the
I want to
touring
wrap
car.
it.
Stratus livery.
I want to wrap it. I'm gonna drift an Isetta around.
It's not hard. It's rear steer.
No, I
It's not
know.
really
Yeah,
drifting
yeah.
if you're steering at the back.
That's very
That's
true. Interesting. I wonder how that would really work. It's a very tight course.
I've never
Listen,
actually driven one.
BMW tuner shops, get at this bitch. Let's go. Thanks for coming in, man. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, let's plug Aurora Straus with 1S on the gram.
Yes, 1S. It's
Driving
just my
the
full
Turner
name.
Motorsport BMW M4 GT4 in IMSA. Yeah.
Woo.
Tell Will I said hi.
I will.
What else do you want to plug before we get out of here? Girls with Drive, what's the next event?
Well,
The Women's Track
hopefully
Day.
Sebring.
Oh, yeah.
But the one
shit.
that I'm sure will hopefully be happening is the Women's Track Day. It's on May 11th. It's in upstate New York. So if anyone vaguely in the Northeast is listening to this, you should totally come.
It's at Monticello, right?
It's at Monticello.
Yeah.
And I did my first ever all-women's event actually 2 days ago at Thermal to celebrate International Women's Day. We were there at the Performance Center for BMW.
Have you spent a
And
lot of time out there? It's pretty cool.
This is my second time. So my first time there was filming a commercial for BMW last February for International Women's Day. They did you ever see that? It was it's a video of me like
sorry.
reading. No, it's totally fine. Me reading like my acceptance letter to Harvard, except it's phrased ever so slightly differently because the like PR people at Harvard were like, no, you can't
What?
say, like, you can't use the exact wording from our acceptance letter because then people will forge it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's super funny. So we had to
Here's
go through
some
all
shit
of
you've
these like
never thought of before.
yeah, no, I heard that and I was like, I totally see that. But also
Forge
what?
it. And then what? Someone just shows up on the first day? Like,
Well,
no,
it's
I
like
got
you
it.
Prank
forge it.
everybody.
Maybe you just I don't know, like maybe it's like post on Instagram. Like I don't really understand it. But
No one could put. If you're going to prank someone that they got into Harvard, you don't need the exact wording.
you just
Like
need to
when you got
create
the
an
letter,
acceptance letter.
did you go compare it to someone else like a
No,
golden
I was
ticket
just
in
like,
Charlie and the
great.
Chocolate Factory?
I saw it and I was like, I have no idea if this is real and I'm
Right.
crying.
Right. So you just go.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, but it was
That's awesome.
But yeah, my 11th track day, I'm hoping that it won't get canceled because of coronavirus, but I did my first all-female track day a couple days ago, and it was super, super inspiring. I think like it's very hard to get involved in the industry as a woman starting from the ground up, because I would argue pretty strongly that at the pro racing level, people tend to just not care that I'm a woman. Like from a peer-to-peer standpoint, like it's not like male racers come up to me and treat me extremely differently.
Yeah. When you're in the car, driver.
No,
driver.
I'm just a driver. Yeah, and they want to beat me, but they also want to beat everyone else, right? Versus when you're just starting out, you are much more likely to receive a lot of flack from the men around you. So having a group of women there, I think, was cool to... and they also were willing to ask questions that I think they would not have asked around a group of guys that weren't stupid questions or questions that guys don't know the answer to and just are too embarrassed to ask, right? Like
men's egos at track days are fucking the worst. The worst.
the scariest thing in the world is being right seat with someone and then like a 20, 30 something year old guy straps in and he's like, don't worry, I'm really good at this. I'm like, I'm going to die.
No,
I'm going to die in this car.
I can't believe you ride right seat with people.
I don't that much.
Okay.
I don't super frequently. I'll do it for like one-off things. Like I have a sleepaway teen racing camp that I run
Really?
every summer.
Oh, that's cool.
I'll ride right seat for that, which people think I'm crazy, but they actually like they have no bad habits to break because they don't drive on the street.
Yeah.
So they're super moldable
Oh,
versus
that's
like
cool. Do they sleep at the track? Do they like camp
they
out
sleep
at
at
the
a
track?
water park 5 minutes away.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's
That's,
like a
that's
nonstop
awesome.
vacation.
You got a lot of
Are
shit
they
going
like
on.
brand new drivers, like where they don't quite have? Because I feel like I got dumber and bolder when I was like 17, 18 than 16. Like 16, very cautious.
Our
18.
age range, we've had everyone from 13 to 18. The driving experience you have on the street has very little bearing on how successful you are in teen racing camp.
I meant how dumb they are.
Oh,
at
how
teen
dumb
racing
they
camp.
are?
Like riding right seat with someone who is 18 versus 30 versus
Yeah.
50. Like it's a very different experience.
Oh, I actually find that most of the kids are much easier to work with and less dumb than the adults.
You got to like break them down, right? Like when I went to racing
They're
school.
also scared of me. Like adults aren't scared of me. They don't consider me intimidating. And I'm like, okay, but my life is in your hands. You need to listen to me. Mm-hmm. Versus kids are like, yeah, okay.
You can thrill ride them in the van, you know, and let them know you mean business, right?
That's true.
You one-handed drift the van around turn
That's
1
true.
entry, and they'll know you know it's up.
Well, also the first conversation we have is like, this is not your average camp in good ways. And also in ways that increase the risk level for you.
Yeah.
So like there is not going to be like at a normal camp, like if you're horsing around with someone, you just kind of get a slap on the wrist and then you like, you know, continue with your day. Versus like if you're horsing around at a racetrack, like there are no second chances. You go home.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of hear that and they're like, this is a huge opportunity for me that my parents sent me to this amazing sleepaway teen racing camp, the only one of its kind in the world.
That's gangster. That's
and
awesome.
like I'm not going to mess it
How
up.
do kids sign up for your teen racing camp?
Go to MonticelloMotorClub.com and it should be on there. We're running different programs this year because we had so much demand the last couple of years that we sold it out pretty much immediately.
That's
which
awesome.
is a sign that we should have more programs.
Wow, that's fucking great. Good for you, man.
Thank you.
Good for you. And regards to your pops. I love the man.
Oh, thank you.
He's
I hope
always
he's doing well
treated
too.
me,
I'm wondering if
really
he's tuning
nicely.
in right now. We had a conversation a couple of days ago. My parents moved to Tampa, Florida.
As
so
you
I
do.
get what?
As you do.
As you do, yeah.
you do.
So I get like weekly photos of them where they have a very loose leash with all of their kids, so I'll occasionally check in, and I check in more frequently than they want me to, right? Like I'll text them and be like, hey, you know,
Leave me alone on
what's
the golf
up? And they're
course.
like, hey, we're busy. I'm like, okay.
Good. Let them be busy in Tampa.
But they always send me photos of them in like sunny 80-degree weather with their little Jack Russell. And I'm like, this is great. I'm walking around in a tundra in Boston.
Well,
I'm
thanks
not
for
jealous
coming
at all.
in, man, dude. I
Thank
hope
you
you have
guys.
a
This
great
is great.
season this year. And we have 2 years left of school or 1?
I have
your
a
last
year
one?
and a half of school left.
You'll get her done.
I will most
done.
likely be taking next spring off for a program.
All right.
That has yet to be announced, but it has something to do with the 3 a.m. European call with a drunk kid in the hallway. So.
Hey, that's good though.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hopefully that kid didn't fuck it up for you.
Hopefully not. He hasn't yet. If he comes back a second time, then I might lose some credibility.
All right. Well, if you want to do any of this cool shit at Monticello, Aurora's family business and a place that is near and dear to my heart, I literally have a Monticello track map on my wall.
Really?
Yeah. I have those, those linear edge like
Yeah.
racetrack things. I have Road America, I have the Nürburgring, and I have Monticello on
Damn.
my wall.
It's a good track. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased, even though I am.
No, it is
I've
a
been
good
to
track.
so many, like, once Monticello succeeded after multiple years of being like very precarious, as you know, a lot of other people have copied the business model, which is good,
Yeah.
right? It's a sign of success for the business. And it actually statistically, like when people join other clubs, they're more likely to join ours instead of choosing between one and the other. So it's good business for us. But a lot of the country club racetracks are kind of like lame. They're not really proper drivers, and this is a proper driving track. Like it's hard.
The club is amazing. The restaurant is amazing. The track, I'm not that about.
Well, I think it comes down to the mentality of like, it's your vision statement, right? Like we would like to be a country, or like how you define yourself. Like we are a country club with a racetrack versus we are a racetrack with a country club. And this is, I'm not trying to diss any other tracks. I just think like this one, and I actually think, objectively speaking, that it's like a fun track to drive and it's hard.
It is, and I think I think Monticello is a racetrack that's a country club, and I think Thermal is a country club that has a racetrack.
And two very different or relatively different markets, and that's like totally cool, right? Like
it's
I think
in Palm Springs.
yeah, but it has nothing, like it's not a bad thing. I just think like the best case in point for this, right, is like race teams test at Monticello because it's a good track to test at. It's very similar to a lot of the like a lot of the high speed corners at Monticello are similar to Watkins Glen, and MMC is on the way to Watkins Glen.
VIR too, yeah.
VIR super
it's very
similar
to VIR.
Freaking love VIR.
VIR is fun.
VIR is probably when people ask about my favorite track, I'm like VIR Road Atlanta.
Have you ever raced there at night?
Yes.
It's the darkest place I've ever
The
been.
first time I ever raced at night was at the 13 hours of VIR in a Mazda with no clutch and 2 gears. It was really fun.
3,
And our
4?
light
Good
bar stopped
question.
working.
Which gears?
What gears?
3, 4?
3rd and 5th.
Oh, you can work with
all right.
that.
No, it was fine.
You can
It was
work
fine.
with that.
But also, it was also a really good learning experience of a race for me because we lost the clutch while I was on track, and I was like, so
what
I'm in
now?
5th gear, right? And they were like, well, you have to rev match, and I was like 15 maybe, and I was like, great, what's that? So I'm on
radio.
track
No
and they're
way.
talking me through. They're like, okay, so when you hit, right, like XYZ RPM, then you need to shift, but it has to be at the exact right moment in order for...
Does anyone have a British guy that can explain this?
It'll just make more sense.
Oh my
It'll just
God.
make more sense. That's insane.
Gnarly race.
And you had, and
It
without
was-
a clutch,
It was super fun. Also, being full speed in a if that's the fastest car you've ever driven, being full speed at night in the S's with a light bar that's like coming in and out, it's freaking terrifying.
Yeah.
Now, if I went back, I would be like, this car is super slow. But
A lot of those light bars have the distance they throw light varies a lot.
Yeah,
I've
no,
seen.
they're bright from here, but from here,
it depends on
you
which
nothing.
one
could
you buy.
see,
and,
like,
yeah.
if a turtle was like crawling in front of you, you could see it.
I was-
But if there's
Yeah.
a crash in front of you, you couldn't.
I was driving this old shit E30 in this 24-hour race, and they put on these terrible Chinese LED, whatever the lights were.
I have ordered
They were
those.
horrible.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that when a faster car would come up on me from behind, my car would cast its own shadow forward into my headlights. It was super, super
I'm
fucked.
so upset. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm really upset.
It's really bad. Listen, I have to get out of here because
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
a
yeah.
meeting. But
Thank you guys so much.
Dude, we just did 2 hours. If you
Cool.
cross 2, you've done a good show.
Well, thank you guys for
Everybody
having me.
go follow-
Thank you to everyone who is listening to me rambling on and on about my
Bro,
old
you've
books.
fucking been there. You are young and you've been there and
Thank
you've
you.
done shit and you're going to keep doing it. Aurora
thank you
Straus,
so
ladies and
much.
gentlemen, thank you for coming.
Thank you
And
guys.
That is our show. The Smoking Tire Podcast is powered by Shout Engine. Get your own damn podcast at shoutengine.com. It's easy. All you need is a microphone, a connection to the internet, and ideally something to say. See, we'll be back on Thursday for the live, folks, with I think the entire band Chevelle is coming into the studio, so that should be interesting. Band named after a car. What could possibly go wrong? See you guys later.
Everything.
Bye.